Chapter 474. The moment the demon purification pot came out, Han Fei knew that something big had happened. The demon purification pot wouldn't have come out if he hadn't needed refining. However, at this moment, the demon purification pot was floating above his wrist. Then, the vine leaf on the demon purification pot, which Han Fei thought was just a decoration, suddenly grew longer and pierced into the life stone. Han Fei quickly shouted, "Hey, I haven't warmed up yet. What are you doing?" Before Han Fei could stop it, the light blue life stone was turning white at a visible speed. In less than 3 seconds, the life stone had turned into a transparent stone. Then, with a crack, it shattered into pieces. Han Fei was amused. "Brother, I can see that you need this thing, but I won't rob you of it. Why are you so excited?" After absorbing the life stone, the demon purification pot didn't seem to have changed at all. The only change was that the tiny leaf shook a little. Then, it sank back into Han Fei's wrist and turned into a tattoo. Just when Han Fei thought it was over, suddenly, the center of his eyebrows flashed, and little black and little white came out. Han Fei exclaimed in surprise. "Huh, how can you two come out on your own?" However, as soon as little white opened its mouth, it disappeared into Han Fei's body with little black. At that moment, a black light flashed in Han Fei's eyes. Then his eyes turned black and white, and the yin-yang divine eyes appeared. Han Fei's body suddenly straightened, and his previously expressionless face became expressionless. However, Han Fei was struggling at the center of his eyebrows. His consciousness didn't disappear, but he suddenly had a desire. He felt that his body was extremely empty. That feeling, it was like hunger. He wanted to eat something, and that thing was the life stone. To be exact, it was the life power on the life stone. Driven by this desire, Han Fei appeared on the 282nd floor. He numbly took out his sea-swallowing seashell and offered it. Then, another mermaid appeared. But this time, Han Fei's reaction was extremely fast. He slowly raised a finger. A drop of water appeared in Han Fei's mind, and then the drop of water turned into a beam of light. Like a meteor streaking across the sky, it flashed past Han Fei's eyes. And on Han Fei's finger, almost at the same time, a flash of light swept across the seawater, leaving a long white mark. Han Fei felt that he had attacked in a daze. Then, before the mermaid could even attack, it was killed by him with one blow. F***CK your mother. Han Fei felt that it was a bit scary. At this moment, his consciousness seemed to be divided into 2 parts. One was empty and ethereal, as if it had instinctively stretched out a finger and launched an attack. Part of him was still rational, which shocked and panicked him. He was panicking because why was he on the verge of losing control after merging with Little White and Little Black? What shocked him was that for the first time, he found that the infinity water could be used in this way, like a flash of profound light, killing the enemy in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, this time his consciousness began to blur. In a daze, Han Fei felt that every once in a while, a stimulant would be injected into his body, making him feel refreshed. Such a state happened 19 times. Han Fei was counting silently, judging how many floors he had passed by the sudden sense of excitement in his memory. "Floor!" As if suddenly awakened, Han Fei suddenly yelled out. As a result, what greeted him was a mouthful of seawater, which almost choked him. Han Fei quickly held his breath, took out a bag of air, and took a few breaths before he recovered. When his eyes gradually became clear, Han Fei suddenly saw that in front of him was a round altar, and he was standing in front of the steps under the altar. This was a broken altar. The stones of the steps in front of him had been broken in some places. On both sides of the altar, there were 2 rows of white curved, thick fish bones standing symmetrically. Among them, some of the bones had been broken and were lying on the altar, and Han Fei, at this moment, was looking at the table in the center of the altar. On the table, there was a dazzling cup-shaped crystal tray and 2 flat trays. If Mr. Hexagon Starfish were here, it would definitely climb up crazily and grab those trays. But Han Fei was sure that those trays were definitely not made of ordinary materials. On the cup-shaped crystal tray, Han Fei saw a red spiritual fruit. Gudu. At this moment, Han Fei's brain almost crashed. At this time, he didn't pay much attention to how he came here, but was attracted by the offerings in front of him. Gudu. Han Fei swallowed again. So, the 300th floor is the deepest part of the steps into the sea? He looked around and found that this place was only as big as the altar. Extending out 100 meters, it was a seal. Han Fei was about to go up the stairs. However, as soon as he moved his feet, he seemed to kick something. Looking down, Han Fei was shocked to find that he was standing on a pile of bones. F***CK. Gudu. What do I mean? Am I not the first person to come here? How many people have been here before? Looking at the ground that was almost paved with bones under his feet, Han Fei didn't feel good. Han Fei raised his hand, looked at the motionless demon purification pot on his wrist, and said helplessly, "Move." Why don't you move now? I don't know how you got me here, but it's almost time, but you don't move. What do you mean? Do you want me to go up and get it? Han Fei was just about to raise his foot, but he suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. Han Fei stood up straight again, his body shivering slightly. He looked at the steps in front of him. There were only 8 floors. Counting the floor on the ground, there were a total of 9 floors. The steps into the sea, the steps into the sea. Are they the steps from above, or are the 9 floors from here? Although he was in the sea, Han Fei felt that his forehead and back were sweating from time to time. His eyelids began to twitch unconsciously. Han Fei looked at the demon purification pot on his wrist again. So, even if you send me here, you can't go up, right? You can't go up. So you want me to go up? Han Fei raised his head and glanced at the spiritual fruit placed on the altar. I really want it. Every day, tens of thousands of people sought opportunities here at the steps into the sea. Who could have known that the true opportunity lay at the bottom? The real steps were also here. Son of AB*TCH. Master Calabash, you are the master. You let me come here because you are sure I can get it, right? Move a few times for me. Promise me that I'll go up. The demon purification pot still didn't respond, but Han Fei was so nervous that he was sweating all over. How could he not be nervous? Suddenly, Han Fei had an idea, and his face lit up with joy. In his hand, a mirror appeared. The mirror of icy salt, a low-quality divine weapon, could copy any creature below the level of a hidden fissure. However, this mirror could only be used 3 times. Before, Han Fei was reluctant to use it even once when he risked his life. But at this moment, Han Fei was going to use it. Yes, he was very sure that he had to use it. At this moment, an ultra-quality battle suit appeared on Han Fei's body. At the same time, with the help of the majestic mystic spell, both his physique and defense should be in the strongest state. Han Fei held the mirror of icy salt, and with a thought, an identical version of himself appeared beside him. This feeling was very strange. When he fought with himself on the white mist salt algae, he didn't feel anything. But at this moment, Han Fei felt that this incarnation seemed to be connected with his mind, as if a connection had been established. However, there was only a connection, and he couldn't actively control this incarnation. Han Fei tentatively said, "Squat down." The incarnation squatted directly on the ground, expressionless and motionless. "Stand up." The incarnation got up and looked ahead, still motionless. Han Fei looked himself up and down. When he was cold, he was quite handsome. It seemed that Zhang Xuanyu would have one more opponent in the future. Han Fei said in his heart, "Go up and bring down those 3 plates for me." When Han Fei issued this order, his heart couldn't help but tighten. Please succeed. If something happened to the incarnation, something would definitely happen to him too. The incarnation raised 1 foot and put on the first step. However, a scene that made Han Fei speechless appeared. The incarnation had 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot on the step. His body was trembling, and there seemed to be an invisible, mysterious force blocking him. Crack! When the incarnation tremblingly raised the other foot on this step, a crack suddenly appeared on his calf. Chapter 475. In Han Fei's expectant gaze, this incarnation climbed the second step, which seemed to be easier than climbing the first step. However, when the incarnation climbed the third step, Han Fei, who was standing under the platform, suddenly staggered. He felt that his brain suddenly went black, as if he had severe anemia, and he almost couldn't stand still. F***CK. That's an incarnation. Did something happen to the incarnation have something to do with me? Han Fei was speechless. Isn't the incarnation made of salt? Is it because of the telepathy? But no matter how telepathy I have with him, I don't know what he has experienced up there. When the incarnation climbed the fourth step, Han Fei suddenly covered his head with one hand, and blue veins popped out on his neck. At that moment, he seemed to see something. It was no longer black. His brain suddenly turned white, and there seemed to be a flash of light. Unfortunately, the picture flashed too fast, just for a moment. Han Fei didn't have time to react at all, and the picture was gone. At this moment, the incarnation had reached the edge of the fifth step. Han Fei seemed to have expected it, and the next moment, another picture flashed. Old Bai. Han Fei's face was livid. At that moment, he seemed to see Old Bai's face. Why Old Bai? What does Old Bai have to do with the steps into the sea? Han Fei covered his head and squatted on the ground. He knew that when the incarnation walked up to the sixth step, a similar situation would inevitably happen. Sure enough, in the instant of the splitting headache, the picture in Han Fei's eyes became a little clearer, but it was still too fast. He seemed to see a flash of knife light. F***CK. What the F***CK? Why are they all instantaneous pictures? Can't you give me a complete picture? Han Fei sat on the ground. When the incarnation climbed to the seventh step, he finally saw a complete picture. Old Bai stood in the sky, looking at him. Why is Old Bai still holding a knife in his hand? No, where did Old Bai's blood come from? Han Fei raised his head and said to the incarnation, "Go on, go up to the eighth step, and then go up." Once again, Han Fei saw Old Bai standing in the sky, and under Old Bai's feet was a large area of houses, and the knife in his hand seemed to be chopping, and a huge knife light swept across the air. Kacha! Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head, only to see that the two calves of the incarnation had been shattered, and the lower half of its body had turned into a pile of white salt. However, the incarnation did not know what pain was. It moved forward as Han Fei ordered. However, when his hand touched the last layer of the platform, the seawater trembled slightly, as if the incarnation had suffered a huge impact. The entire incarnation shattered at this moment, turning into fine white salt particles, and then directly disappeared into the seawater. Han Fei was shocked. In that instant, goosebumps rose all over his body. Gulp! What the F***CK? Is it that dangerous? Even such a powerful incarnation died. Han Fei waved his arm. "Master Calabash, help! I can't handle it." The demon purification pot blinked, and Han Fei was overjoyed. "Do you want to get it yourself?" After waiting for a long time, seeing no response from the demon purification pot, Han Fei decided to have a feast in Forge the Universe. However, he couldn't enter Forge the Universe anymore. Han Fei said angrily, "You're forcing me to do this, aren't you? You must be forcing me. You just want me to do it, right? Remember, this is the level 3 fishery. How many people can come to this place? Okay, then I'll do it. If I die, you'll be buried here." Seeing that the demon purification pot didn't respond, Han Fei frowned. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Gulp! Han Fei took out a large bag of air and then took a few deep breaths. What was the purpose of breaking into the steps into the sea? Wasn't it for the opportunity? Others didn't even have the qualification to see this opportunity, but now that the opportunity was right in front of him, he didn't dare to go up? How could that be? So, Han Fei raised his foot and impulsively stepped on the first step. To be honest, Han Fei was a person full of adventurous spirit, and this kind of adventurous spirit was almost fanatical. When Han Fei came to this world, it was because he had a mania. Therefore, Han Fei's impulsive action at this time was just impulsive without thinking. No reaction. Han Fei was taken aback. When his incarnation stepped on the first step just now, his calf was cracked. Why did he feel like he was stepping on an ordinary step? Han Fei subconsciously raised his other foot. However, as soon as he lifted his foot, Han Fei suddenly felt a mountain-like pressure coming at him. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. He didn't see anything, only felt that his body was trembling, and a terrifying coercion fell on him. Han Fei immediately confirmed that this was a kind of coercion, but he didn't know where it came from. Anyway, as soon as this coercion came out, he only felt that his hair stood on end. Immediately afterward, a series of voices came to Han Fei's ears, and the source was Old Bai. Hurry up! That coarse rebuke seemed to reverberate between heaven and earth. The dark veil in front of Han Fei seemed to be suddenly lifted. At this moment, he was between heaven and earth, high in the sky. Han Fei looked down and found that he was at least 1,000 meters above the ground. When he looked back, he saw that little gold had been attached to him. Its huge wings were spread, and there was still blood dripping from them. Suddenly, a knife light spanning a kilometer swept over the top of Han Fei's head. Han Fei looked up in horror and found that there was a battle in the sky. Old Bai was being besieged by a group of people, all of whom were fierce. In the sky, several huge spiritual beasts were flying across the sky, blocking the sun and the sky. Where is this? Who is Old Bai fighting with? Just when Han Fei was in a daze, he saw that Zhang Xuanyu had already appeared beside him. What are you waiting for? Run. Zhang Xuanyu? This is... However, Zhang Xuanyu didn't wait for Han Fei to speak at all and pushed him violently. Then, a streak of sword chi that swept over directly pierced a hole in his stomach. Zhang Xuanyu. Han Fei's heart shook and he shouted, and then he saw a hand falling from the sky. Han Fei watched as a sword-wielding expert was smashed into smithereens by this slap. Old Bai shouted, "Take these children away." Before Han Fei realized what was going on, Zhang Xuanyu had been taken away by a big void hand. On the other side, Lu Rinquang appeared below, crying and shouting, "I won't go." Han Fei was about to shout when he saw a sword light cross dozens of kilometers and roll towards Lu Rinquang. Han Fei roared, "Damn fatty, get out of the way." At the same time as Han Fei shouted, an old man with a stubble beard drew a huge arc in the sky and blocked in front of Lu Rinquang. Han Fei was relieved. As soon as he rushed down, his back was hit hard and his whole body smashed into the city like a meteor. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was about to explode and his brain almost crashed. After he flew out dozens of kilometers, a tentacle wrapped around him, and Xiao Zhan suddenly appeared in front of him. Xiao Zhan shouted, "Revenge." "Revenge? Revenge for what?" "Rumble," before Xiao Zhan answered. Han Fei's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Old Bai exploded in the sky. Old Bai, President, Xiao Zhan grabbed Han Fei with one hand and threw him away. Han Fei only felt that he was a fish on someone else's chopping board. He didn't know anything except that he was being thrown around. In the sky, Han Fei saw Xiao Zhan and his 8-armed conch explode under the siege of 3 people. Han Fei was very sad and shouted, "Teacher, not only Xiao Zhan, but on the battlefield below," Han Fei noticed another gaze. Wenren glanced at him and then rushed into the crowd without looking back. At this moment, in the sky, a cold voice echoed, "The Thug Academy is going against the law. You deserve to die." Laughter echoed. "Today, I'll kill all your teachers and students." Seeing that there were people he didn't know, Han Fei sneered at the sky. "The Thug Academy can only fight to the death. But if one of us escapes, we will definitely kill your whole family in the future." Someone said in a sad voice, "Today, I'm here to die. Who dares to fight me?" Someone shouted, "You want to kill me? Look at who you are." One after another, people that Han Fei didn't know appeared in the sky, on the ground, and above the city. The sky was hazy, blood was raining, and the roars and explosions were endless. Han Fei felt that he was like a small boat in a raging sea. He was running, and he didn't even know why he was running. Someone was chasing him. One flash stone after another was exploding. Han Fei felt that he appeared in many places. There were flames of war everywhere, and he couldn't even see those people's faces clearly. Suddenly, Han Fei saw Luo Xiaobai standing 1,000 meters away from him, expressionless and emotionless. Han Fei shouted, "Xiaobai, run!" Seeing that Luo Xiaobai didn't run, Han Fei panicked and rushed to her. But he saw that Luo Xiaobai was shaking her head as if refusing him. Knife light and sword light flashed around him, and Han Fei was hit hard again and again. Then, Han Fei felt that his vision went dark as if he had been hit by something. His whole body was like a meteor streaking across the sky, falling down. At that moment, he felt that his bones were shattered and his internal organs were damaged. He vomited mouthfuls of blood. At that moment, Han Fei sensed death. He felt that he was going to die. He felt physically and mentally exhausted. He wanted to sleep and just let his body fall. Suddenly, Han Fei felt a sharp pain on his wrist. He suddenly woke up and was shocked to find that he was already on the altar. Chapter 476. Han Fei was woken up by the demon purification pot. Just now, he was almost immersed in that environment. Old Bai, Xiao Zhan, Wen Rinyu, Zhang Xuanyu. They all seemed to be dying. Han Fei was desperate at that time. When the stab of the demon purification pot appeared, hope arose in his heart. He was surprised to find that Old Bai was not here. Where did Zhang Xuanyu come from? When Han Fei opened his eyes, he had already reached the top of the 9th step, and his hands were dripping with blood. His mouth was full of a strong smell of blood. Pooh! Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood, feeling that his internal organs were rolling and his body was almost broken. F***CK. It's just a step. Do you have to do this? Han Fei hurriedly cast the divine healing technique on himself. At the same time, he grabbed a spiritual fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. In addition, there were some healing pills, all of which he poured directly into his mouth. It was not until 2 hours later that Han Fei finally felt better. He wanted to get up, but as soon as he sat up straight, he found that his body was creaking. Wow, how King injured was I just now? Why do I feel like I was beaten? Han Fei looked at the steps behind him. The steps didn't change at all, but they were indescribably weird in Han Fei's eyes. He didn't understand why he would see the Thug Academy when he walked down the steps into the sea. Was what he saw in the past. Of course, he knew the tragedy of the Thug Academy 30 years ago, and countless heavenly talents died. But if this was the tragedy of 30 years ago, why did he see Zhang Xuanyu, Lurin Kuang, and Luo Xiaobai? By the way, I don't see Xia Xiaochan. Why isn't Xia Xiaochan here? Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself again. Therefore, this environment actually had a loophole. If the 4 of them were here, there was no reason why Xia Xiaochan wasn't here. Bah! Han Fei spat at the steps. Damn it, it almost killed me. Han Fei didn't rush to get up and check the offerings on the altar. Anyway, the offerings and the altar had been here for so many years, and these offerings wouldn't run away by themselves. On the contrary, the more critical the situation, the more impulsive it was, especially now that he was still injured. If there were any problems with the sacrificial offerings, he would be the one to suffer. It took Han Fei another 3 hours to fully recover from his injuries. When he was absolutely sure that he was in peak condition, he stood up again. Immediately, Han Fei wanted to summon the ultra-quality battle suit. However, with a thought in his mind, Han Fei saw a ragged set of clothes with holes everywhere on his body. Han Fei. F***CK me. How do my clothes become like this? Han Fei was dumbfounded. This is an ultra-quality battle suit. It was refined with dozens of materials and more than 500,000 points of spiritual energy. Just the cost of the materials alone was an astonishing figure. However, he had only walked 9 steps, and it was broken to this extent? Han Fei was secretly shocked. What would happen if he didn't have this ultra-quality battle suit? It took him an hour to reforge the supreme-grade battle suit and put it on. Only then did Han Fei stand in front of the table where the offerings were placed. This time, Han Fei saw clearly that there were 3 items placed in the center of the table. 1, in the center, on a cup-shaped tray, there was a red spiritual fruit. To Han Fei's surprise, he couldn't see any information about this fruit at all. The demon purification pot seemed to have lost its effect. On the tray to the left of the spiritual fruit, there was a finger bone. This finger bone was like jade. Han Fei wasn't sure what kind of bone it was, but it looked like a human finger bone. However, how could a human finger bone be jade? The demon purification pot still couldn't see any information. Han Fei didn't think too much about it and turned his head to the right of the spiritual fruit. There was a black bead on that tray, and there was also no information. However, the bead looked like a black pearl, only the size of a thumb. Compared with the other two, it didn't look special at all. Han Fei took a few steps forward, planning to collect these 3 ultra-quality items first. Whether he knew them or not, these were definitely top-quality treasures. Just look at the bones at the bottom of the stairs. How many people died here to get them? Which one of the people who could come here was mediocre? Even Chao Tian, a recognized genius, only made it to the 251st floor. Even if he was cultivating, Han Fei estimated that with his strength, it would be difficult for him to fight until the mermaids appeared. Han Fei didn't think he could pass the last 20 floors easily. When Han Fei walked to the altar and was about to take action, he was suddenly stunned. He was standing in front of the table just now and didn't notice it at all. At this moment, he was standing beside the table. He was shocked to find that the first thing he saw was not the bright red spirit fruit in the middle, nor was it the finger bone or the black bead. Instead, it was the wooden decorative shelf behind the 3 treasures. The decorative shelf was shaped like the shelf where ordinary people put decorative knives, but it was much smaller. On this shelf, there were no swords or sabers on it. Instead, there was a vine with a leaf on it. After seeing the green vine, Han Fei's eyes widened. There was a layer of light and shadow flowing on the green vine. Even after countless years, it was still bright and lustrous. The question was, wasn't this the vine of the demon purification pot? Han Fei raised his hand and looked at the demon purification pot in his hand. He quickly opened his palm, and with a thought, a small calabash appeared in his palm. The moment the demon purification pot appeared, the green vine on the shelf immediately trembled, and the demon purification pot in Han Fei's hand began to spin crazily. Han Fei was very surprised. He still remembered that the last time the demon purification pot spun was when he was awakened. At that time, he got little black and little white. And this time, the demon purification pot was still spinning. Rumble! Suddenly, there seemed to be a loud noise between heaven and earth. Han Fei felt that his ears were buzzing, and he didn't know where the sound came from. Every time there was an unknown anomaly, it was always accompanied by a major event, so Han Fei was very anxious at this moment. He didn't dare to move, because he found that the green vine was trembling and flying towards the demon purification pot. This process was very slow, which made Han Fei quite anxious. Outside, on the steps into the sea, it was still in full swing, and ordinary people were doing what they were supposed to do. Every day, a large number of people waited at the entrance of the steps into the sea. They didn't do anything else but stared at the steps into the sea. They were waiting for the black and white ghosts to appear. Xia Xiaochan was also among this group of people. She said that she would wait for Han Fei for half a month, and it had only been less than 3 days. Rumble! Suddenly, the steps into the sea shook. Many people were shaken by the sudden shaking, and some even fell directly to the ground. What's going on? Where's the roar coming from? Why is the steps into the sea shaking? Did someone obtain a peerless treasure? For a time, the entire sea platform was boiling, and everyone was asking each other what happened. However, everyone was on the platform, so who really knew? It was useless to ask. At this time, Xia Xiaochan's eyes flashed, and her heart did a flip. Did Han Fei get the treasure of the steps into the sea? It was impossible for a place like the steps into the sea to start shaking for no reason. Something must have happened. If it didn't happen on the surface, it must have happened at the bottom of the sea. And after the 250th floor, there were only 2 people. One was Chao Tian, and the other was Han Fei. Xia Xiaochan guessed that it was definitely Han Fei who caused this shock. She hadn't seen Chao Tian, but she didn't expect that Chao Tian had been on the steps into the sea for so long and hadn't made any noise. Now, there was no reason for him to do so. So it must be Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei was swallowing, and the green vine had grown to the mouth of the demon purification pot. Wow, 2 vines? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He had been paying attention just now. He thought that the green vine seemed to grow to the vine of the demon purification pot itself, and the 2 vines would merge into one. But the green vine bypassed the original vine on the gourd and fell in the mouth of the pot. As a result, Han Fei's expression was weird now. At this moment, the demon purification pot had changed from 1 vine and 1 leaf to 2 vines and 2 leaves. The demon purification pot slowly began to stop spinning. Just when Han Fei thought the demon purification pot would become a tattoo again, the demon purification pot suddenly rushed into the space between Han Fei's eyebrows. Shit, where did it go? The next second, Han Fei only felt that in his mind, a sapphire gourd was floating in a gray mist, slowly spinning. Chapter 477. The demon purification pot seemed to have become different with the addition of a vine. Han Fei immediately felt that his head trembled. It was like inhaling the cool scent of mint. He was greatly refreshed, as if something had suddenly been added to his brain. Han Fei subconsciously looked at his own data. Sure enough, there was a slight change. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 39, advanced dangling fisher, spiritual energy greater than 128,526, 5999, spiritual power 999,999, perception range greater than 5,000 meters, spiritual heritage level 5, high quality, spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish level 30, main art, void breaking technique. Volume 4 of Void Fishing, Demon Level, Divine Quality. There was no information about weapons, but the data of spiritual power and perception range popped up. That was quite interesting. Han Fei knew that his perception range had reached 5,000 meters, but he never knew how much spiritual power he had. However, when he saw the 999 data, Han Fei knew that it was a bottleneck. However, although Han Fei knew how much spiritual power was, what was the use of it? He knew his own, but he didn't know other people's. If there was no comparison, what was the point of this information? Han Fei didn't pay more attention to his own information, because the ground was shaking again. Compared with exploring the secrets of the demon purification pot, treasures were more important. He could check the demon purification pot at any time, but he couldn't allow anything to happen to these treasures. Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and was about to grab the 3 treasures on the table. Han Fei's first sight was naturally the red spiritual fruit. After all, it was so dazzling and attractive. Suddenly, he found that new data popped up in front of his eyes. Name: Heritage Stealing Fruit. Introduction. This is the legendary taboo fruit that can steal the heaven's meridians and add them to one's body. Level: Heaven, Quality, Divine Quality, Spiritual Energy greater than 1 million points. Effect: Steal the spiritual heritage of heaven and change one's fate. Note: Only suitable for fishers. If anyone else takes it, they will be burned to death by the heavenly fire. F***ck. Han Fei was shocked, and then he burst into fury. When he saw the words Heritage Stealing Fruit and the introduction, Han Fei was overwhelmed. How King awesome must the spirit fruit be to steal the heavenly meridians? In the past, Han Fei had only heard of stealing the fate of a country and stealing the dragon chi. Han Fei had never thought of such a thing. He thought it was just a gimmick and a legend. But now he believed it. There was actually such a heaven-defying spirit fruit in this world. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was going to rise and become a real genius, a demon, and an unparalleled heavenly talent. However, the explanation that a fisher could be used was like a bolt of lightning that struck Han Fei's head. Han Fei's crazy smile froze. Roar. Do you know what kind of grievance it is to have a poor spiritual pulse? Son of AB *TCH, a fisher? Don't tell me I have to destroy my own cultivation? Is there something wrong with my brain? My heart hurts. My heart hurts. I can't breathe. But regardless of whether it was useful or not, this was a heaven-defying treasure. It was absolutely impossible to leave it here. Han Fei was going to stuff it into the demon purification pot. Putting away the heritage-stealing fruit, Han Fei immediately turned his eyes to the jade-like phalanx. In his eyes, information emerged. Name Sky-Dissecting Finger Introduction. The phalanx of a king-level master has been corroded by time and can't be integrated into the body, so it can only become a divine weapon. Activated by a large amount of spiritual energy, it can barely exert the power of a king-level master. Quality ultra-quality divine weapon. Current state. Usage once, not recast, unrefined. Note, it consumes too much spiritual energy. Don't try it if you have less than 10 million points of spiritual energy. F*CK, F*CK, F*CK. Han Fei was in a daze again. It was said that there were divine weapons in the steps into the sea, and Han Fei thought there should be. However, he didn't expect that a divine weapon would be like this. Han Fei didn't know how strong a king-level master was. However, Han Fei knew that the void fishing art was created by 9 king-level masters. It could be seen how precious this phalanx was. This was the ultimate life-saving weapon. As long as the opponent wasn't a king, this fingerbone could easily shatter the attack of a king-stage powerhouse. Gudu, Han Fei hurriedly put away the jade finger. This thing was awesome. It could kill whoever it met. In the end, Han Fei's heart was trembling. These 2 treasures almost scared him to death. What about the 3rd treasure? Han Fei swallowed and subconsciously moved his eyes over. Then, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Data emerged in his eyes. Art of Invincibility, unrated, introduction. A fist technique created by an unknown expert. This is a wonderful fist technique that was constantly comprehended during battles in troubled times. Those who cultivate this fist technique can shake the sea and shake the sky with their fists. Shortcoming: it requires the cultivator to have a strong body, a tough soul, an unyielding mind, and an invincible will. Deduction: cannot be deduced, can only be comprehended. Note: anyone who can create an invincible technique believes in invincibility, so the technique they use is invincible. It can fight any technique in the world, so it's unrated. Gudu. Han Fei swallowed and was dumbfounded. It was too powerful. Was there really an invincible technique in this world? From information, Han Fei could tell that this seemed to be the strongest combat technique that surpassed all other techniques. Because cultivators only had one belief. I am invincible if not me. Then who else? Can Han Fei hurried to grab the black pearl. He couldn't miss such an invincible divine technique. If it was another time, another place, these 3 treasures together would be enough to create a peerless powerhouse. Think about it. When you were a fisher, you stole the heaven's heritage with the heritage-stealing fruit, practiced the art of invincibility with your talent, and kept the life-saving means of a king-level expert. Even an idiot could be transformed into a genius, right? Han Fei wondered if the 3 items on the altar were specially prepared for someone. Fortunately, the ritual didn't seem to succeed. Otherwise, the person who obtained these items would be extremely arrogant. These were all the thoughts that flashed through Han Fei's mind. At this moment, he was grabbing the black bead. However, at the moment when Han Fei touched the black bead, suddenly, a mystic light burst out of the bead. Han Fei only saw a huge fist smashing at him, fierce, domineering, fierce, and terrifying. Han Fei had no time to dodge. As if he had been hit, he took 7 or 8 steps back in a row and covered his face with his hands. Although this was just a simple action that seemed to be familiar to everyone, this action exposed his weakness. The enemy was invincible. They could beat you, but you didn't dare to fight back. Naturally, you would be beaten by them. Han Fei sat on the ground, his eyes glazed, and a lot of insights appeared in his mind. He saw countless battlefields. There was an iron-blooded man who didn't wear a battle suit or use weapons. He only wrapped his fists in fish skin and fought everywhere. The sea creatures were collapsing. The strongest enemy was penetrated. Han Fei was shocked to find that the so-called art of invincibility didn't have any combat skills, incantations, or strange tactics. Everything was honed by this strong master in battles. At first, the pictures in his mind were still dealing with sea creatures various sea monsters, and various heavenly talents. In the end, Han Fei saw what it meant to shake the sea with 2 fists. As this person punched the sea with both fists, the sea as far as the eye could see was churning like noodles. As the saying went, fists shook the sky. Han Fei saw that the shadow of this man's fist rushed up tens of thousands of meters and killed a super big fish on the spot. Wait, where did the fish come from? Han Fei was slightly stunned. However, this thought just flashed through his mind, because there were too many pictures which seemed to record the life of this strong master. Half a month later, 3 dragon boats came to the steps into the sea. There was no other reason than that there had been frequent vibrations here recently. Besides, there was a strange scene. The sacrificial effect of the steps into the sea seemed to be a little out of control. On the first floor of the steps into the sea, someone sacrificed an exotic creature, which led to a massacre. Someone sacrificed a high-quality spiritual weapon on the first 100 floors, which caused a sensation in the entire steps into the sea. However, this was only a very small number of cases, because most people found that after they sacrificed, they couldn't summon a creature, so there were no prizes or rewards. On this day, half a month later, countless people crowded at the steps into the sea, and something that shocked everyone happened. Chao Tian came out of the steps into the sea. Someone asked, "Chao Tian, did you go to the bottom floor?" Chao Tian replied, "No." When Xia Xiaochan heard this answer, she turned around and left. She knew that this time it was a big deal. Chapter 478. Above the altar, Han Fei had been sitting quietly for half a month. At this time, there was no spiritual energy fluctuation in Han Fei's body, nor did he reveal any energy fluctuations. However, he was fighting. Yes, he was fighting in those scenes. Han Fei knew that these scenes were all fake, but whenever he entered these scenes, he still felt overwhelming pressure pouring over him. In fact, in these scenes, what he experienced was not fighting skills at all, and he didn't even feel the slightest satisfaction of fighting. What he felt was pressure, the pressure brought to him by various marine creatures. It was a pity that the scenes he could enter were only dangling fishers. As for the other scenes, they only flashed through his mind for a moment. For example, he saw mermaids, not the kind of mermaids that had not fully evolved, but the kind of real mermaids. Just a glance at the scene made him frightened, as if the other party's eyes were on him. Suddenly, Han Fei opened his eyes. Fortunately, no one saw it, otherwise they would be scared by Han Fei's eyes at this moment. Those eyes contained strength, confidence, and invincibility. Just at a glance, he could tell whether this person was a strong master or not. Han Fei got up calmly and twisted his neck. He walked to the table on the altar, waved his hand, and directly collected the table and the tray into Forge the Universe. If the Almighty who had set up this altar had seen this scene, he would have vomited blood. "You King took the treasures. Why did you take away the tables?" Han Fei's idea was very simple. These 4 things were all priceless treasures. How could they be placed on ordinary tables? "Since I'm here, I'll take them all." Han Fei looked around and found no place to go out. He didn't immediately try to communicate with the steps into the sea. He walked down the steps step by step. This time, there were almost no obstacles. He didn't feel anything, as if the steps under his feet were ordinary steps. Han Fei stood on the bones all over the ground and looked back at the altar. At this moment, he suddenly realized why he appeared in the heavenly water village. Why did the demon purification pot bring him to the heavenly water village? Why was there a vine of the demon purification pot in the level 3 fishery? Are there only 2 vines in the demon purification pot? Han Fei didn't know that, but he felt that the demon purification pot itself was a big secret. Buzz, the ground shook again. However, such tremors had occurred countless times in the past half a month. Han Fei wondered if there was something wrong with the seal, just like in the Seaborn Prairie. After all, the 4 treasures here had all been taken away by him, and even the table had been taken away by him. At this moment, he suddenly had a question in his heart. Who was the one making the sacrifice here? What was the purpose of the sacrifice? Who would receive this sacrifice? Now, all these sacrifices were in his pocket. Did the one who was sacrificed exist? Would he come looking for trouble with her? Han Fei walked around the altar and found traces of a battle here. The edges of the sacrificial altar were slightly damaged. Then he pulled apart the white bones, and, sure enough, he found some bones that did not belong to humans. Han Fei climbed up the altar again without any hindrance. He walked to the two broken fish bones and chopped them with a blood-drinking knife, only to find that they were not broken, not even the slightest scratch. Han Fei's eyes immediately lit up, and he stuffed the two pillar-like fish bones into Forge the Universe. This was King good stuff. It was better than the Blue Sea Wandering Dragon Bone, and as smooth as jade. At first glance, he could tell that these were not ordinary fish bones. It was a pity that there were only two broken fish bones. Han Fei counted, and there were a total of 20 fish bones left. Han Fei was tempted. According to the size of these fish bones, a fish bone could be made into at least 100 weapons, and they were probably of the highest quality. How many could he make with 22? 2,200? Han Fei couldn't help but be tempted. These fish bones were too valuable. Although he had gained enough benefits, who wouldn't mind having more treasures? Han Fei used the draw technique on the fish bones on the altar. With a dang sound, he was forced to take a few steps back. When he took a closer look, he found that there were still no scratches on the fish bones. CK. Are these fish bones used to refine divine weapons? At this time, as if some kind of chain reaction had occurred, the steps into the sea suddenly shook violently and didn't stop until 10 minutes later. Seeing that he couldn't cut it, Han Fei immediately ran to the bottom of the steps, summoned the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Come on, pull these bones apart and see if the ground can be dug. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Fortunately, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't speak. Every time you call me out, nothing good will happen. It's either digging holes or digging the ground. Well, now Master's interests are getting more and more strange. He's starting to dig bones. This altar was not large, only more than 50 meters in radius. Unlike the big red mantis shrimp, it was solid soil, while this place was full of wreckage, so it was very fast. It took Han Fei and the nine-tailed mantis shrimp about half an hour to clean up the area around the altar. After cleaning up, Han Fei was shocked to find that the stacked wreckage here was more than 3 meters thick. He really couldn't imagine how many geniuses had died here. At this time, Han Fei was lying on the ground of the altar, stuffing the tip of the knife into the bottom of the altar. However, what made him very helpless was that this thing couldn't even be stuffed with the tip of the knife. Han Fei stabbed the blood-drinking knife into the ground, but it was not soil at all, but a layer of flat water. The water was muddy, and it seemed that he could penetrate it with a stretch of his hand. But in fact, he couldn't dig it at all. If the hexagon starfish were here, it would definitely tell Han Fei, this is a King super seal. As long as the seal is not broken, you can't poke the knife through it. Seeing that it couldn't dig, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp crazily flicked the seal with its forelimbs, making the seal explode non-stop. Later, seeing that he couldn't move it anymore, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp simply went on strike. It's not that I don't want to dig, but I can't dig it at all. Han Fei grinned and refused to leave. Every few seconds, he would hold the altar and collect it. Master Calabash, I help you find divine leaves that have been lost for many years. How about you collect an altar for me? I will. He didn't know how many times he tried, but suddenly the altar shook. Han Fei immediately looked overjoyed. Hope, continue to collect. I will collect. Bim. Suddenly, Han Fei heard a loud noise, which seemed to come from under the altar. Has the foundation been broken by me? Bam, bam, bam. Suddenly, Han Fei heard a violent knocking sound. It seemed that something was attacking under the altar. Shit! Han Fei was dumbfounded. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp had quickly swam to Han Fei's side. From time to time, it touched the altar with its forelimbs. It seemed to have also noticed that there seemed to be something below. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Damn, there are living things below? As a spirit gatherer, he was more sensitive to the movement of spiritual energy. Han Fei suddenly felt that there were bits of spiritual energy around him flowing towards the altar. To be precise, it might not be on the altar, but from the bottom of the altar, far away and slowly seeping up. At that time, Han Fei jumped back 2 or 3 meters and observed the dynamics of the surrounding spiritual energy blankly. After a while, he was finally very sure that there seemed to be something under the altar absorbing the wandering spiritual energy. It's over, it's over. Things are getting out of hand. Han Fei was horrified. Could there be something terrible sealed under this altar? Although the free spiritual qi gathered very slowly and didn't seem to permeate much, the problem was that spiritual qi could be accumulated into a mickle. For example, if Han Fei set up a large interlocking spirit gathering formation on the altar at this moment, then no matter how slow the gathering of spiritual energy was, it wouldn't be a problem to gather 20,000 points of spiritual energy a day. Seeing that the nine-tailed mantis shrimp was still flicking its head at the altar from time to time, Han Fei went up and kicked it. Are you crazy? What if it bounces off? Let's go. In the outside world, there were more and more people on the steps into the sea, and everyone was curious. The situation in the seaborne grassland hadn't calmed down yet. Only the insect tide had subsided. Someone passed through the seaweed wall and found that the lotus fish was no longer willing to carry people through the abyss. Now, the undersea city had collapsed before the seaborne grassland was over. Good heavens, the steps into the sea had a problem immediately afterward. Some people came in, and naturally some people left. Those who left were wandering around the periphery of the steps into the sea. To put it bluntly, they were watching a show or waiting for some good luck to come. Someone said, "Only fools will go inside at this moment. God knows if the steps into the sea will collapse or not. If it does, what will happen to the people inside?" Someone said, "Many people have already run out. Don't you see that those who dare to enter the steps into the sea are basically peak-level dangling fishers?" Someone sighed. "I heard that it is Fan Datong, the black and white ghosts." Chao Tian said that he had seen him on the 251st floor. Someone sighed. So the masters on the wanted list all hide their strength deeply. The 251st floor, how many F*King treasures did they have to sacrifice? Someone guessed. At least a mid-quality spiritual weapon, right? Someone laughed and scolded. "Are you King stupid? Why are your eyes so shallow? What do you think it is? A mid-quality spiritual weapon? If it were so simple, the steps into the sea would have been flattened long ago." When the discussion outside was in full swing, suddenly a fishing boat flew over from the sky. On it, an ugly girl shouted while flying, "Come on, I found the traces of the black and white ghosts. They have already reached the periphery." "Huh? What? How is it possible? F*CK. When did they go out?" For a time, the entire periphery of the sea platform was in an uproar, and the girl, shouting, had been drowned in the crowd. Chapter 479. On an ordinary fishing boat, Xia Xiaochan turned into an ordinary girl and looked at the platform into the sea. Now, there seemed to be no movement. It was estimated that Han Fei might not come out for a while. However, he would come out sooner or later. Now, there were still too many people on the steps into the sea. She had to find a way to lead some away. On the platform into the sea, near the center, there was a small circle, and there was no one in a radius of nearly a kilometer. No matter how chaotic other places were, no one dared to come here. And here gathered the heavenly talents and children of the major sects in the Thousand-Star City. Many people had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. Chao Tian was surrounded by a group of people at the moment. Yang Yu asked, "Old Chao, did you really meet Fan Datong on the 251st floor? The one with the stick?" Sun Mu nodded. "His best weapon is knives." Li Hai and Li Baijiu nodded on the side. "Yes, that guy is very good with knives. Ordinary people can't resist him." Yi Baiyu also came over. "The guy you were talking about is very bad. He even colluded with Tang Gu, Mu Ling, Chao Qiu, and 2 swords to besiege me. However, he is very slow. Is that guy really so strong?" Chao Tian smiled innocently. "My footwork is not as good as yours, but in terms of head-on combat, you are too weak." When Chao Tian spoke, many people curled their lips. Only a few of you can say that Yi Bai Yu is weak. Why don't you try someone else? Mo Fian asked. We're Chao Chio and two swords. A disciple of a major sect said. They slipped away. We had diarrhea for so long. As our accomplices, how dare they stay here? As soon as this person finished speaking, he found that someone was looking at him sympathetically. Then he felt himself flying. He had been kicked into the sky by someone. Chao Tian glanced at the person. What? Do you still want to get revenge? No. I was just saying. The person was horrified. Chao Tian usually looked simple and honest, but he doted on his younger brother the most. If anyone dared to speak ill of Chao Chio in front of him, they would definitely be beaten up by Chao Tian. Therefore, although many people couldn't wait to beat Chao Chio up in front of Chao Tian, no one dared to mention Chao Chio, whether it was Yang Diyu, Sun Mu, or anyone else. Li Baijiu laughed. Well, Chen Aochen ran away a long time ago. Chao Tian seemed to have left with your sister. Chao Tian grunted softly, as if he wasn't worried about this matter at all. However, Li Hai suddenly looked at Yi Bai Yu and said, Fan Datong is a strange man. Didn't you say that there are two black and white ghosts? Fan Datong is only a black impermanence. I heard that the white impermanence is a woman. Why haven't I seen her? Mo Fian suddenly exclaimed, Not good. They can disguise themselves. Disguise? They were stunned for a moment and then looked at Mo Fian. Mo Fian immediately told everyone about her encounter with Xia Xiaochan on the 201st floor. At that time, if Han Fei hadn't arrived in time, she might have fought with Xia Xiaochan. Sun Mu suddenly said, You're saying that the man was a woman in disguise? Whose disguise technique could achieve such a complete disguise, turning themselves into a man? Yang Diyu shouted, What's so strange about that? He can make so many of you suffer from diarrhea. Have you ever seen a dangling fisher suffer from diarrhea? Sun Mu frowned. Mo Fian, the man you mentioned, seems to be quite different from the white ghost. I've heard of the white ghost. She is a soul warrior, and the man you mentioned is a hunter. Wait, where has Chao Chio been before? Everyone. After a while, someone said, I think he went to the sea grassland. Someone shook his head. No, he seems to have come from the direction of the undersea city. Someone saw him driving the ghost speed divine boat there. Suddenly, Mo Fian was taken aback. Sun Mu, you mean? How was it possible? Sun Mu's face darkened. Why is it impossible? Don't forget, the black and white ghosts are intermediate dangling fishers. Yang Diyu poked his big head over. What are you two talking about? Li Baijiu nodded. Yes. What's the secret code? Speak human language. Sun Mu suddenly raised his head, his eyes full of indifference. We have all been deceived. However, we still need to confirm one thing. Ask someone to find out when the black and white ghosts first appeared. Where did they first appear? The others were not familiar with Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, but Sun Mu's eyes were already cold. If the black and white ghosts were really Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan, then these two people were too terrifying. They could fight all the way to the steps into the sea after completely abandoning their own advantages, which was enough to show the talent of these two people. After a while, one of Sun Mu's subordinates came with an advanced dangling fisher. If Han Fei were here, he would be surprised. Why was Li Hani still in the steps into the sea? Li Hani almost cried. He was really lucky. On the steps into the sea, he fought crazily without asking for prizes. Others sacrificed for opportunities, but he sacrificed for a breakthrough. Now, he had just become an advanced dangling fisher 2 days ago. He felt that if he survived a great disaster, he would surely have good fortune later on. No one would dare to believe such a rapid growth rate if they told others about it. The subordinate said, Young master, it has been confirmed. When the black and white ghosts appeared, they happened to be in the middle of the steps into the sea and the undersea city. And these two people also appeared after the collapse of the undersea city. This person's name is Li Hani. Han Fei once pretended to be him and was later caught by the black and white ghosts. Li Hani's heart sank. He was not a fool. According to this person's words, the King black and white ghosts were pretended to be Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. Li Hani suddenly remembered that there were no cooks. Fan Datong was also a foodie and so was Xie Xiaoan. They were exactly the same as Han Fei. However, they always put the same person in the hot pot, which was what frightened him the most. It was also because of this that he had never suspected them. Now that he thought about it, when Fan Datong asked him about Han Fei, he would be beaten up if he said anything bad about Han Fei. Damn it, it was 100% Han Fei. There was no other way. Sun Mu just glanced at Li Hani, ignored him, and then analyzed. In this way, it makes sense. He sneered. At that time, we all entered the steps into the sea, and Chao Qiu saw it. At that time, the seaborne grassland was in turmoil, and Han Fei became famous in one battle. So Chao Qiu went to the seaborne grassland to find Han Fei. But at that time, Han Fei had already pretended to be Li Hani and ran to the undersea city. After hearing this, Chao Qiu went to the undersea city again. But when he arrived, the undersea city had already collapsed. He could only turn back to the steps into the sea. Then, Chao Qiu naturally met the black and white ghost that Han Fei pretended to be. Wow! Yang Diyu's eyes widened. Damn it! So, Chao Qiu always knew that the black and white ghosts were Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan? Mo Fia nodded. Otherwise, do you think Qiu would choose people who are not strong as allies? Li Hai and Li Baijiu looked at each other. I see. So that Fan Datong is the person your Sun family has been looking for. Chao Tian still looked silly. Oh, Qiu has a good eye. Everyone, the group of people just dared not say anything. If someone else found such a troublemaker to trick them, they would have been skinned alive by them. How could they be like this now? They couldn't even say a word. Chao Tian was not interested in this, so he asked, Where is Tangu? I want to fight with him. Someone beside him said, Tangu and Mu Ling have been gone for almost 10 days. Chao Tian nodded slightly. Then forget it. It's boring here. I'm leaving. Yi Baiyu said, Chao Tian, I'll go with you. Yi Baiyu was a free and easy person. After meeting Han Fei, he always felt that this person was very strange. This kind of person, he would either be able to beat him 100% or not. He was just fast, but in terms of combat power, he might not be as good as Li Hai and Li Baijiu. Therefore, Yi Baiyu was not going to argue with Han Fei. In the future, if there was a chance, he would even exchange drinks with Han Fei and enhance their friendship. Okay, with that, Chao Tian left without looking back. Being with a group of scheming people always made him feel very tired. He didn't like it very much. After Chao Tian left, many people breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Diyu carried a big axe. How about it? Are we still waiting here? We must wait until that damn Han Fei comes out. I'm going to chop him to death. F***CK off. Mo Fian rolled her eyes at Yang Diyu. Can you beat him? You're going to chop him to death? If Fan Datong is really Han Fei, then Han Fei's growth is too fast, isn't it? When he was in the sea grassland, his subordinates, who were only peak-level dangling fishers, almost killed him several times. But how long has it been since then? More than a month? Han Fei had broken into his immortals slaying formation alone. Yang Diyu seemed to have also been defeated by him. And Mo Fian also failed to defeat Xia Xiaochan, and even Yi Baiyu was almost surrounded. At this moment, there was a noise outside. Someone shouted, Black and white ghosts have been found. Quick hands, no hands. Chapter 480. Sun Mu and the others were all stunned. Why did Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan come out? Why did they come out? Mo Fian's face turned ugly. Damn it, both of them can disguise themselves. They must have sneaked out in the chaos. Yang Diyu immediately raised his two big axes. Son of a B***, come with me. Let's chop those two B** stars to death. Among the crowd, the most dumbfounded were the disciples of the Grand Void Academy. At this moment, Ji Wenxuan and Tian Yishan were surrounded in the middle, and a group of people was yelling at the two guys. Ji Wenxuan, are you an idiot? That's what you get for bragging. I knew that our Grand Void Academy didn't have such a powerful figure. He's so King strong. Now, the Grand Void Academy will become a laughing stock this time. Someone suggested, why don't we go there too? Tian Yishan scolded. If you have the ability, why don't you try over there? That's very intimidating. In that case, he kept talking about our Grand Void Academy. What could you do if you were him? Someone curled his lips. I'm sure I can see through him and fight him. G. Winshuan scoffed. F*CKU. Do you think you can beat him? Can you withstand the power of Gong Yuehan's sword? He can. Gong Yuehan is no match for him at all. The group of people fell silent. After a while, someone suggested, then should we follow them or not? Tian Yishan said grumpily, follow them? If you think you can withstand the Immortals' slaying formation, you can go after them. There was no movement on the side of the Grand Void Academy, nor did the other academies. Although many people had been persecuted by Han Fei, most of them had felt Han Fei's strength. After they left the steps into the sea, the rumors about the black and white ghosts became even more bizarre. They said that he cooked people, defeated Gong Yuehan with 3 slashes, broke into the Immortals' slaying formation alone, fought Tang Ge, and tied. At this moment, they said that he defeated Chao Tian. No matter which rumor it was horrifying. Who dared to chase them? Especially when Sun Mu proposed that the black and white ghosts were Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. Most people felt that it was nothing to be robbed of a sea-swallowing seashell. Money lost can be earned again. If he lost his life, he would have nothing left. Only Yang Diyu, that hothead, went down with a group of subordinates. Li Hai and Li Baizhou also went with him. As for Sun Mu and Mo Fian, they only sent a few of their subordinates to confirm the authenticity of the news. Sun Mu, in particular, only sent 2 people out this time. He was more willing to believe that Han Fei was still in the steps into the sea and that it had something to do with the current vibration of the platform. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just less than an hour after everyone left, the steps into the sea suddenly shook again, and the degree of the shaking was not small, it was stronger than the previous days. At this moment, there were not many people coming out of the steps into the sea. At this moment, Han Fei was standing on the mouth of the spring in the middle of the steps into the sea, wearing a mid-quality battle suit, with long hair and a big hammer in his hand. He looked a little scared. If Xia Xiaochan were here, she would have recognized this person as Han Fei immediately, because it was simply too fucking obvious. The face Han Fei used was none other than Li Gang's face, and the few of them were probably the only ones who were familiar with Li Gang. It was for this reason that Han Fei used Li Gang's face so that Xia Xiaochan could recognize him. Li Gang's face happened to be a common face. Han Fei was thinner than Li Gang. Even people from the Blue Sea town might not be able to recognize him if they were not familiar with Li Gang. As soon as Han Fei got on the mouth of the spring, someone immediately shouted to him, "Brother, what's going on down there? How many people are there?" Han Fei made up a story. A lot of people ran down there. God knows why the steps into the sea keep shaking. Someone laughed. Then did you summon a creature? Han Fei's eyes flickered. Yes, I just fought with a big octopus. Well, I got a low-quality spiritual weapon. Han Fei thought that his answer wouldn't be a problem. The summoned creature was neither strong nor weak, and the reward he got was neither good nor bad. It should be very mediocre. However, many people said in surprise, "You actually summoned a creature? Didn't you say that you can't summon creatures now? Can you summon them again?" Han Fei was shocked. What's going on? You can't summon creatures now? Han Fei had an idea and hurriedly said, "It's not that I can't summon creatures. I tried many times and finally summoned an octopus." There was nothing wrong with what he said. When Han Fei landed on the steps into the sea, many people ignored him. Now, more people paid attention to the intermediate dangling fissures coming out of the mouth of the spring. It was said that the black and white ghosts were both intermediate dangling fissures. Therefore, Han Fei, an advanced dangling fissure, was naturally ignored by others. Han Fei walked in the crowd and found that there seemed to be fewer people on the steps into the sea. After a while, someone walked over from outside, shouting as he walked, "Which bastard said that the black and white ghosts came out? I've been chasing them for a long time, but I haven't even seen a shadow." Someone laughed and said, "Aren't you talking nonsense? Didn't they say that the black and white ghosts are Han Fei and Xiaochan? They have divine boats. What do you have?" Han Fei was shocked again. What? When did they expose themselves? Han Fei hurriedly pulled the man and said, "Brother, How did the black and white ghosts become Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan? The man glanced at Han Fei. Oh, you don't know? Han Fei looked puzzled. I don't know. I was robbed by Han Fei. This bastard said to me that he would rob me of my money, not my life. Then he took away my sea-swallowing seashell. The man patted Han Fei on the shoulder sympathetically and said, "Brother, you've suffered a lot. You're not the only one who has been robbed. Now, who hasn't been robbed here? But don't even think about revenge." The disciple of the big clan from the Thousand-Star City said that the black and white ghosts are Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. I heard that the earthquake of the steps into the sea this time is related to them. Han Fei sighed. Really? The man clicked his tongue. Why would I lie to you? Look over there. All the people from the Thousand-Star City are there. Han Fei looked in the direction the man pointed, but there were too many people, and he could only vaguely see an open space over there. Han Fei smiled bitterly and said, "Well, I'm sorry. I hope I don't meet them again. I don't want to be robbed again." Someone laughed and said, "Don't think about it. Now many people have gone to chase them." Han Fei asked, "Isn't the steps into the sea still shaking? Are you sure it's them?" The man's face turned serious. "Of course it's true. Someone said that he saw the black and white ghosts with his own eyes." Han Fei nodded and then turned his head and frowned. Xia Xiaochan showed up? It must be so. Xia Xiaochan didn't have to show up. Now that she showed up, she must be trying to distract these people, right? Han Fei passed through the crowd and glanced at the crowd, only to find that there were many teams from the 7 major sections. These people were all gathered in groups. Among them, Sun Mu and Mo Fian were standing together and seemed to be discussing something. Suddenly, Han Fei was taken aback. Isn't the guy being carried next to Li Hani? Why was he caught again? Li Hani was thinking about how to get out of this. I just came out to gain experience and seek opportunities. Do you think it's easy for me? It's all that damn Han Fei's fault. Why did you pretend to be me? What did I do to you? Didn't I just have a little conflict with you in the fiery mountain? Why are you so narrow-minded? You still hold a grudge against me. Li Hani glanced around in the dark, and suddenly he saw a familiar figure in the crowd. The owner of the Fish Dragon Hot Pot restaurant? Although Li Hani didn't get along with Han Fei, he often went to the Fish Dragon Hot Pot restaurant, especially after the conflict with Han Fei's team. He specially went to study Han Fei and the others. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. So he naturally knew Li Gang. For a moment, the two of them stared at each other in astonishment. But then, Li Hani felt that his eyes were about to burst into flames. F*CK, I was F*King controlled here. But after you came out, you deliberately came here to make fun of me? Huh. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you frozen here? Seeing Li Hani's stiff body, one of Sun Mu's men slapped him in the face. Sun Mu and Mo Fian were alarmed by this small movement, and they both looked over. Han Fei said directly, "If you dare to tell anyone, I will beat you up every time I see you when I return to the Blue Sea Town." After saying this, Han Fei turned around and went into the crowd. When Sun Mu looked over, he could only see a disappearing back. Sun Mu's face suddenly changed. "Attention, everyone, chase after him. Han Fei is out." First, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 481. Previously, there was a rule on the steps into the sea that no one was allowed to kill each other on the steps into the sea. This rule was to prevent the strong from bullying the weak and monopolizing the resources. However, there was actually an element of convention in this. After all, there was no peerless expert overseeing this place. Therefore, when a certain person aroused public anger and robbed thousands of people on the steps into the sea, this rule no longer existed for that person. Sun Mu's reaction was not slow. He immediately sensed Li Hani's abnormality and seemed to be a little angry. What could make Li Hani angry? Of course it was Han Fei. Therefore, when Sun Mu saw the figure disappearing into the crowd, he found it increasingly familiar. If Han Fei hadn't run and pretended to be a passerby, he wouldn't have noticed him. But the point was that the figure left by Han Fei was very familiar to him. Make way, make way. Han Fei, where are you going? Attention! Han Fei has left the steps into the sea. Han Fei was speechless. I just glanced at you in the crowd, and that damn guy found me? One had to know that his current range of perception was very far, so he naturally knew that Li Hani did not betray him. This could only mean that Sun Mu was too shrewd. However, apart from Han Fei, everyone else also had the ability to perceive. Therefore, although Han Fei was leaving, he was still locked on by a group of people, flying on the platform into the sea, fighting on the platform into the sea. It was all bullsh*t. The stronger one was, the bigger the fist was. The people of the seven sects stood up together. Seeing Sun Mu, Mo Fian, and the others chasing after them, someone immediately shouted, "Everyone, let's join hands to kill the enemy. Fan Datong is the shame of our generation. Kill him." These people had a large perception range, but Han Fei's perception range was even larger. The crowd began to riot. Han Fei even saw some people take out their weapons, and some people began to fuse with their spiritual beasts. F***CK. In the crowd, someone pointed at Han Fei. "It's him! It's him! It's him!" Han Fei had already started running, shouting, "Little Neza! Little Neza!" Now that he had been exposed, Han Fei couldn't care less about it. He suddenly leaped up and flew into the sky. Voila! A pair of golden red wings spread open. Whoosh! Han Fei flapped his wings and began to fly wildly. The moment he flew out, the place where he had stopped in midair was directly enveloped by colorful and magnificent battle skills. F***CK your mother, Han Fei swallowed. Where did so many people come from to beat me? Who did I offend? Who did I offend? Almost at the same time, Sun Mu and the others leaped into the sky. All of a sudden, enormous fishing boats appeared in the sky. Swish, swish, swish. The fishing boats, like serial rocket launchers, broke through the sky in the blink of an eye and chased after them, leaving a white mark in the sky. Han Fei took out the second wind god boat. Compared with the one Han Fei gave Xia Shaochan, this one was nearly 500 kilometers faster every hour. After all, when he refined the first wind god boat, he didn't have so many spiritual weapon materials. As soon as the wind god boat appeared, Han Fei turned into a red stream of light in the sky. However, not long after Han Fei ran out, he found that another fishing boat that was moving at an extremely fast speed was chasing him from the side. Ghost speed divine boat? Where did it come from? Han Fei robbed Sun Mu and the others of their sea-swallowing seashells, but none of their sea-swallowing seashells had ghost speed divine boats. According to Chao Chio's temper and his hatred for Sun Mu and the others, he naturally wouldn't give it to them. However, even the ghost speed divine boat was still no match for the wind god boat. In fact, the wind god boat was 15,000 kilometers faster than the ghost speed divine boat. This was the same as the difference between a car with 120 horsepower and a car with 100 horsepower. It was impossible for Han Fei to get rid of the other party immediately. When Han Fei took a closer look, he found a boy he didn't know at all, and the boy was bald. Han Fei was particularly afraid of seeing a bald head. As soon as he saw one, he would think of what he looked like when he was bald. At that time, Xia Shaochan and the others almost laughed at him. Han Fei said, "Hey, who are you? Do I know you? Why are you chasing me?" The bald man grinned. Chun Aochin of the Chun family in the Thousand Star City. Han Fei was speechless. "Did I offend you?" The corners of the big bald man's mouth curled up. "I heard that you are very strong. There is no other reason. I want to fight you." Han Fei cursed. "Are you King crazy? Can't you see I'm running away? If you want to fight, next time. I don't have time to fight with you now." Han Fei didn't bother to talk to him. He had long heard of the name Chun Aochin. It was said that among the younger generation of the big clans, he and Chao Tian were fighting geniuses with fists. Chao Chio had mentioned Chun Aochin more than once. However, didn't this guy go out long ago? Why is he still here in the steppes into the sea? Fortunately, Han Fei's wind god boat was too fast. After chasing for a while, Chun Aochin found that he had been left behind. Didn't Chao Chio say that the ghost speed divine boat was the fastest fishing boat in the level 3 fishery? How could there be a fishing boat faster than the ghost speed divine boat? Seeing that he couldn't catch up with Han Fei, Chun Aochin shouted, You are running in the wrong direction. However, Han Fei had already run out of the range of his voice transmission and didn't hear anything. Han Fei muttered, "Hey, little guy, still chasing me? You think too much, don't you?" Just when Han Fei was still triumphant, his face suddenly stiffened and his expression changed abruptly. As he was running, a fishhook appeared in front of him out of nowhere. It directly tied his legs and violently pulled him into the air. Swish! Han Fei immediately put away the fishing boat and took out the blood-drinking knife. Rip! The fishing line was cut, and Han Fei had already flown dozens of kilometers away in the blink of an eye. 1,000-mile fishing technique? A hanging fisher? No, a hanging fisher doesn't have such a long distance. Huh? And dozens of kilometers away, on the top of a dragon boat, a hanging fisher exclaimed in surprise. This boy reacted so fast that he cut off his fishing line in an instant. Han Fei spread his wings and immediately rose into the air. However, in Han Fei's perception, the fishing line without the hook was still tied to him. Damn, a dragon boat? High in the sky, Han Fei saw a huge fuzzy figure in the distance. It must be a dragon boat. I actually entered the area of a dragon boat. Immediately, Han Fei turned around and left. However, he immediately saw a black spot chasing him in the distance. It was Chun Aochin who was going to fight with him. Han Fei was stunned for a moment, and the fishing line wrapped around his arm again as if it didn't want to let him go at all. F***CK. A hanging fisher interferes with matters outside the dragon boat. Majestic mystic spell. Bam! Han Fei's body surface exuded terrifying energy. His face flushed, his muscles slightly bulged, and the blood in his body surged constantly. So what if you were a hanging fisher? If you have the ability, then get out here. Han Fei grabbed the fishing line with a backhand and pulled the hanging fisher on the dragon boat with a huge force through the fishing line. At the moment when Han Fei grabbed the fishing line hard, the hanging fisher's face suddenly changed, and his whole body was directly pulled up by Han Fei, almost flying out of the dragon boat. Come back. The hanging fisher roared, and billowing spiritual energy broke out on the top of the dragon boat. On the dragon boat, many people were dumbfounded. What's going on? Did the top of the boat explode? On the other side, when Han Fei saw Chun Aochin coming in the blink of an eye, he sneered. How dare you compete with me in spiritual energy? I'll kill you. Buzz. Buzz. The hanging fisher only felt that a stream of majestic spiritual energy came from the fishing line, all gathering in one point. What? He can already break through the void? Rumble. On the top of the dragon boat, a large amount of spiritual energy burst out. Many people had noticed at this moment that someone was fighting on the top of the dragon boat. Chun Aochin shouted, Han Fei, come and fight me. Han Fei cursed. Damn you. Don't you see I'm fighting now? Chun Aochin grinned hideously. I don't care. If I want to fight, even the hanging fisher has to stand aside. With that, when Han Fei was wrestling with the hanging fisher, Chun Aochin punched at Han Fei. Bam! Han Fei was sent flying backward and swept hundreds of meters in the sky. The sky was not the sea, so Han Fei could only use his wings to offset the impact. After being hit by Chun Aochin's punch, the wrestling between him and the hanging fisher was interrupted, and he was pulled in the direction of the dragon boat. At this moment, the dragon boat was already clearly visible. After all, during the wrestling, the dragon boat didn't stop moving. Besides, it was only a few dozen kilometers away, which could be covered in an instant for both the dragon boat and the fishing boat. From a distance, Han Fei saw the top of the dragon boat and suddenly shouted, The one on the dragon boat. If you don't kill me today, you'll die. Humph, don't talk nonsense. Come here. Han Fei's eyes turned cold. Seeing Chun Aochin coming at him again, he no longer reserved his strength and slashed out 100 knives, drawing streams of light in the sky. I, Han Fei, want to go. Who can stop me? Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 482. In the sky, knives flew like locusts, and hundreds of knife lights pierced the sky and went straight to Chun Aochin. Ultra-quality spiritual weapons? So many? Chun Aochin's face changed. He wanted to retreat, But how could he be as fast as the million knife art? Almost in the blink of an eye, he was swept by the knife art. A protective barrier appeared in front of him. Unfortunately, this protective barrier only lasted for less than 2 minutes before it was shattered by the million knife art. Puff, puff, puff. In the blink of an eye, dozens of wounds appeared on Chun Aochen's body. Unfortunately, Chun Aochen had already escaped in the 5 minutes. Otherwise, Han Fei felt that he could even kill him directly. On the other side, the hanging fisher's eyes almost popped out when he saw this scene. Is your family a master of refining? 100 supreme-grade spiritual weapons at once? Han Fei held the embroidery needle in his hand. At this moment, the embroidery needle was enlarged and fell from the sky, aiming at the hanging fisher on the top of the dragon boat. At that moment, the embroidery needle even produced a violent flame in the air. Han Fei sneered. I'll remember you. Don't let me go. Otherwise, when I come back, I'll beat you up. On the dragon boat, countless people looked up, and many great fishing masters were horrified just by looking at it. Even peak-level dangling fishers didn't dare to come out at this moment. This was too King fierce. Who was Han Fei talking to? Someone exclaimed, Crazy, it's a hanging fisher, the controller of the dragon boat. This guy's talking to the controller of the dragon boat. Someone exclaimed in a daze, so strong. This kind of power can definitely kill an ordinary peak-level dangling fisher with one blow. Someone kept swallowing. Is this the King Strong Master who ranks 3rd on the wanted list? So strong. How can we chase him at this level? 5 times the power of the majestic mystic spell, plus the weight of the embroidery needle, and Han Fei was falling from the sky. What kind of power did he have at that moment? Even Han Fei himself couldn't estimate it. The hanging fisher's face turned cold, and in the blink of an eye, a crab pincer phantom rose into the air and collided with Han Fei's embroidery needle. Rumble, the entire dragon boat was shaken, and broken pieces of wood flew across the top of the dragon boat. The hanging fisher slid backward on the top of the dragon boat. Because he didn't use his full strength, he accidentally stepped on a hole in the roof of the ship and fell into it. Han Fei's situation was even worse. The gap between a dangling fisher and a hanging fisher was too big. Although Han Fei had experience fighting inferior manfish, those inferior manfish were of a high level, but their understanding and level were too low compared to sea demons, and their combat ability was greatly reduced. Compared to humans, the inferior manfish were much weaker in terms of spiritual heritage, contractual spiritual beasts, combat skills, and reaction speed. The hanging fisher on the dragon boat was very strong. After the blow, Han Fei flew back thousands of meters, feeling that his hand was almost broken. He quickly put away the embroidery needle. If he didn't put it away, he was sure that he wouldn't be able to hold it anymore. I'll flash. Because of the delay, Han Fei had already seen the countless fishing boats chasing after him. They were overwhelming, horrifying. I'll flash, I'll flash, I'll flash. Han Fei crushed the flash stones in his hand as if they were worthless, and his whole body turned into a phantom in the sky. Except for appearing near the dragon boat twice. After the 3rd time, he had been far away from the dragon boat. After dozens of times, Han Fei didn't know where he had flashed to. Anyway, Han Fei had too many flash stones to use. After crushing hundreds of flash stones, seeing that there was no one in the sky, Han Fei took out the wind god boat again and began to run away. Han Fei ran so fast that he didn't give others a chance to catch him. On the dragon boat, after Han Fei ran away, the hanging fisher didn't chase after him. He was horrified at this moment. How strong was Han Fei's power just now? He looked up at his fist, only to find that there was blood dripping down. How is it possible? He is only an advanced dangling fisher. The hanging fisher's face darkened. At this moment, he needed to seriously consider Han Fei's words. If he grew into a peak-level dangling fisher, would he be stronger? Although he didn't quite believe that a dangling fisher could challenge him, that was for ordinary people. For a talented heavenly talent, this was not necessarily true. After all, there was indeed an example. Chao Tian once killed an intermediate hanging fisher. Few people knew about this, but it didn't mean that no one knew about it. At that time, Chao Tian was just an advanced dangling fisher. However, Han Fei didn't need to know this. He only knew that he had run away. What he didn't know was that dozens of seconds after Han Fei ran away, on the dragon boat, the hanging fisher calmly ordered his subordinates to repair the top deck. Although the dragon boat was very strong and sturdy, it was only a large ship in the level 3 fishery. How could it withstand the full bombardment of a hanging fisher? Among them, one of the subordinates behind the hanging fisher was reporting at this moment. "My lord, we found Xia Xiaochan." Oh, the hanging fisher was slightly taken aback. Why did this subordinate tell him this information? It was reasonable for him to catch Han Fei. Han Fei had killed people on the dragon boat, so he did it to uphold the rules of the dragon boat. Although Xia Xiaochan was also with Han Fei, he had no reason to kill this person. Was there something wrong with this subordinate's head? However, just at the moment when he was stunned, the subordinate in front of him disappeared. He only saw a shadow suddenly wrapping around his body. Huh! A terrifying dragon roar exploded in his ears. Following that, an incomparably tyrannical saber light swept toward his neck. Bam! The hanging fisher was shocked, gathered all the spiritual energy in his body on his neck, and then subconsciously punched back, and the fish shadow rushed hundreds of meters away. Xia Xiaochan's figure appeared 100 meters away. There is one more person who wants to kill you. Pay attention to your head. As soon as the hanging fisher was about to take action, Xia Xiaochan disappeared. Damn it! This hanging fisher was only the controller of the dragon boat, but he couldn't control everything. If he could, he really wanted to instantly activate the dragon boat array and trap Xia Xiaochan in the boat. Unfortunately, at this moment, Xia Xiaochan had already run away. She squeezed the flash stone and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The hanging fisher touched his neck with his hand and looked at it, only to find that it was bleeding too. If Xia Xiaochan had become a hanging fisher, wouldn't he have been killed on the spot? He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Compared with Han Fei, this Xia Xiaochan was even more frightening. After she got close to him, even he didn't notice her at all. This was really weird. After all, Han Fei was a soul warrior and a spirit gatherer, and his fighting style was big. However, it was different for the hunters. Just like Xia Xiaochan, she only wanted to kill him with one blow. If she failed, she would flee thousands of miles away. Faintly, the hanging fisher regretted attacking Han Fei. Looking at the frightened eyes of his subordinates at the moment, the hanging fisher snorted coldly. "What are you looking at? F***CK off." The group of people hurriedly apologized and fled. When everyone left, the hanging fisher suddenly felt some liquid flowing over his cheek from his ear, and then he touched it with his hand, only to find it was all blood. Immediately afterward, blood began to flow from his nostrils. F***CK. In fact, the battle was more than that. After being swept by the million knife art, Chen Aochen was not seriously injured and just fell into the sea. At this moment, he was blaming himself. He underestimated this opponent so much that he didn't fuse with his spiritual beast, contractual spiritual beast, or even use any combat skills. Who the F***CK would have expected that Han Fei had nearly 100 ultra-quality spiritual weapons? Are these F***King ultra-quality spiritual weapons free? Did they fall from the sky? Even the descendants of the big clans wouldn't be given ultra-quality spiritual weapons by their families. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to gain experience at all. He had reason to suspect that these ultra-quality spiritual weapons of Han Fei all came from the steps into the sea, and it was very likely to be related to the abnormal movements of the steps into the sea. Just a few minutes after Chen Aochen swallowed the pill, a figure suddenly appeared on the bottom of the sea. The man was holding a halberd, breaking through the waves, and a red and white dragon shadow suddenly came. White dragon feather spirit shrimp, Tanga. It was too fast and too fierce. The halberd came too fast and too fierce, as if a white dragon was swimming in the bottom of the sea. "Hey, Tanga, what are you? Do you mean?" Chen Aochen's hands turned bright golden, grabbing the halberd, and his whole body was pushed all the way to the bottom of the sea. On the seabed sand, hundreds of meters long scratches were left. Huh. The halberd in Tang Ji's hand was dazzling, and the top suddenly exploded, and then a series of fancy hammer blows followed. Tang Ge was full of fighting spirit. Every time he attacked, he had the strength of 1,000 kilograms, causing explosions on the seabed. Chen Aochin hadn't fully recovered from his injuries, so he was directly suppressed by Tang Ge and whipped by the halberd. Fortunately, he was good at combat, and his physique was also extremely strong. Otherwise, ordinary people would have been whipped to death by Tang Ge. Chen Aochin said angrily, "Tang Ge, what do you mean?" Tang Ge stood in the muddy sand, with the halberd erected beside him. "I heard that there are two unparalleled fists in the Thousand Stars sect. One is Chao Tian, and the other is you, Chen Aochin. Today I'll fight you." Third update, asking for votes. The author said, "There's nothing special to say. Eat well, sleep well, write well." End of this chapter. Chapter 483. In the end, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were separated. Now, Han Fei had no intention of hiding his tracks at all. Therefore, when he escaped, he deliberately let others see him. Compared with Xia Xiaochan, he was the one who stayed the longest on the steps into the sea and even walked to the end. If someone wanted to dig out the secrets of the steps into the sea, the first person they would look for was definitely not Xia Xiaochan, but Han Fei. In fact, Han Fei was not worried about Xia Xiaochan's safety. In terms of the ability to escape and hide, Xia Xiaochan was now almost unparalleled. Whether Xia Xiaochan knew the Thousand Faces technique or not, she only needed the metamorphosis water. That thing could turn into anything. Xia Xiaochan could even turn the metamorphosis water into a big fish and wrap herself in it. No matter how great the metamorphosis water was, it might not be able to find her. Of course, Han Fei also deliberately separated from Xia Xiaochan. He could share some things with Xia Xiaochan, but people always had to keep some of their own secrets. Besides, after the steps into the sea this time, Han Fei was even more eager to find the treasures left by Ren Tianfei. After getting the art of invincibility, Han Fei felt that his physique was unparalleled. But he was almost certain that Ren Tianfei, who had a strong body, must have left some treasures about body tempering. After all, a person's greatest achievement was his own creation. Once he died, Ren Tianfei didn't want his special skills to be buried. If Han Fei could find this treasure in the level 3 fishery, at that time, coupled with the art of invincibility, God knew how strong he would become. In addition to this reason, there was another reason why Han Fei didn't want to take Xia Xiaochan there. That was because the abyssal chasm was too dangerous. According to the exploration notes of the abyssal chasm given to him by Yang Ryun, this place was full of dangers. For hundreds of years, countless teams had gone here to explore every year. At first, these people were promised a lot of benefits, but later, everyone found that those who went and didn't come back, so no one was willing to go. In the end, the level 3 fishery dispatched an entire dragon boat with nearly 200,000 people to go together. As a result, the dragon boat was never heard from again, and no one had ever seen it in the level 3 fishery. Since then, the dragon boats of the level 3 fishery began to detour when they were 50,000 kilometers away from the abyssal chasm and no longer moved forward. Of course, the exploration notes of the abyssal chasm also recorded that someone had returned from the abyssal chasm. However, most of them had either gone mad or turned into fools. These people all had one thing in common, and that was that they were all skinny like dried corpses. In addition to these, there were also a lot of small incidents about the abyssal chasm. For example, someone once chased the golden fish near the abyssal chasm and accidentally entered it. In the end, when he came out, he had already become a middle-aged man, and he was also a fool. For example, someone had explored the abyssal chasm. Not long after he entered, he came out on the other side of the sea. He had traveled hundreds of thousands of miles. There were also people who didn't want to enter the sea. Instead, they wanted to fly over the abyssal chasm. In the end, by the time they flew out, the people on the ship had already turned into skeletons. There were far too many such strange records, so many that it was impossible to count them all. When Han Fei carefully read the exploration notes of the abyssal chasm, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Isn't this the F** King Bermuda Triangle? Han Fei felt that reading the exploration notes of the abyssal chasm was as interesting as reading the unsolved mysteries of the sea. Just like what he knew in his previous life, the Bermuda Triangle, one of the most terrifying forbidden areas in the world, was just as weird as this. No matter what kind of plane, cruise ship, or ship it was, it would make you disappear. In fact, in his previous life, Han Fei had studied the Bermuda Triangle and once wanted to explore there. In the early days, people just thought that the sea here was chaotic, prone to storms, and there were eddies on the bottom of the sea. Some people said that there were wild wolves, tsunamis, and so on. In the end, when it was really inexplicable, people often associated the unknown with theology, saying that there was an illusory eye in the Bermuda Triangle that could make the people on the ship get lost. But when technology developed, the most advanced instruments would fail, and planes would also disappear. At that time, people began to put forward the magnetic field hypothesis, which was unanimously accepted by everyone. But there were also unexplainable weird phenomena. For example, when a plane flew over the Bermuda Triangle, decades had passed in the outside world. Was this also a problem with the magnetic field? But Han Fei knew that those in the Bermuda Triangle were all rumors, and some scientific teams had specially refuted them. But Han Fei didn't know whether they were true or not. Now, this abyssal chasm seemed to be even more dangerous than the Bermuda Triangle. In Bermuda, there were people who could walk out of it, and it was even a tourist attraction. It was just that it would break out intermittently. Very few people who entered the abyssal chasm could escape. Han Fei cursed, F***, Zhang Xuanyu, you idiot. Why did you come to this damn place? Han Fei had another purpose, which was to find Zhang Xuanyu, which was more important than getting Ren Tianfen's treasures. After all, Zhang Xuanyu had been in there for a long time. Then Han Fei continued to curse angrily. Ren Tianfen, you son of a B****, do you want me to die fast enough? The level 3 fishery spans tens of thousands of kilometers. Why didn't you choose anywhere? Why did you hide the treasures in this abyssal chasm? 3 days later, the news that Han Fei controlled a fishing boat to enter the abyssal chasm spread throughout the dragon boat, and everyone who heard it was dumbfounded. Someone exclaimed, he has already run away, and no one can catch up with him? Why did he run to the abyssal chasm? Is he courting death? Someone was speechless. Lunatic, is this the gap between ordinary people and geniuses? Are all geniuses so bold? Someone sneered. Can geniuses do whatever they want? That's the abyssal chasm. I can imagine the scene of a heavenly talent dying here. Near the flowstone pit in the level 3 fishery, Xia Xiaochan appeared. In front of her, there was a squad trembling with fear, not daring to speak. Did that guy go to save Zhang Xuanyu? How can he save him in such a big place? Xia Xiaochan asked. Let me ask you, is there a fat man near the flowstone pit? Huh, girl, that thing happened a long time ago. Xia Xiaochan scoffed. Bullshit. What I want is information. If you don't give me any information, I will throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Someone said with a sad face. Girl, we really don't know. Suddenly, someone hurriedly said, Girl, you can go to the Spectre to buy information. Everyone in the level 3 fishery knows that the Spectre's information is the most accurate. We are just here to try our luck. Xia Xiaochan frowned slightly and murmured, Spectre, evil shield. Okay, you go find Zhang Xuanyu, and I will go find Lu Renquang and Little White. Chao Qiu and 2 swords were drifting near the 10,000 Smoke Valley in the level 3 fishery. Chao Qiu held a piece of information and exclaimed, Han Fei went to the abyssal chasm. My sea god, does he dare to go there? 2 swords, let's go to the abyssal chasm, shall we? Wang Zitian shook his head. No. Before we went out, I don't believe that no one told you that you can go anywhere in the level 3 fishery except the abyssal chasm. Chao Qiu wailed. But there must be a big secret in that place. Wang Zitian sneered. You have to be alive to know it. If you want to go, I won't stop you, but don't expect anyone to find you. Chao Qiu said angrily. Then forget it. When Han Fei comes back, I will ask him what it is like inside. Wang Zitian smiled. So, In fact, you have long known that the black and white ghosts are Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan. Qiu looked up at the sky. I don't know. I just think they are very powerful. Wang Zetian snorted. Then pray that he can come back alive. At this moment, Tang Gu was holding a piece of information, sitting in a room on the 4th floor of a dragon boat. Outside the boat, the spirit-absorbing array was being activated, but Tang Gu didn't feel it at all. Mu Ling came over with some snacks. Don't worry, he is not a fool. Since he went to the abyssal chasm without hesitation, he must have a reason. Tang Gu looked serious. He didn't take Xia Xiaochan with him. He went alone. Mu Ling was slightly taken aback. Until now, the two of them hadn't seen what Xia Xiaochan looked like in person. Mu Ling couldn't help but say softly, "Have you found one thing?" Tang Gu raised his head and asked in confusion, "What?" Mu Ling smiled slightly. "Your brother is not a simple person. With the sea token, he still dares to run around in the level 3 fishery. He went to the seaborne grassland, but the big red trunk in the center of the seaborne grassland disappeared. He went to the undersea city, but the undersea city collapsed into ruins. He went to the steps into the sea, and now the steps into the sea shake dozens of times a day. Everyone's sacrifices have gone wrong." Tang Gu couldn't help grinning, nodded proudly, and said coldly, "No wonder he is my brother." Mu Ling smiled, but in fact, she was rolling her eyes in her heart. "Your brother is simply a troublemaker. Wherever he goes, there will be trouble. If he stays with you for a while longer, he may lead you astray. I can't rest assured." In a level 3 fishery, while many people were surprised by Han Fei's actions, Han Fei himself didn't feel anything. At this moment, he had rushed to the edge of the abyssal chasm 50,000 kilometers away. To be precise, it should be about 30,000 kilometers away. At this moment, dozens of kilometers away from Han Fei, 3 huge tornadoes were spinning on the sea, and the sea was surging violently. The wind god boat loomed in the sea, and from time to time, fish jumped out of the water and were whipped to death by 9 tails on the boat. Chapter 484. Han Fei swaggered all the way here and didn't stop at all. Because he had enough treasures and materials, it didn't matter if he continued to rob or search some small secret realms. It had been more than 5 months since he entered the level 3 fishery, almost 6 months. Han Fei thought that he was now in a peak state. Ren Tianfei's statement was actually very clear. This place was very dangerous. However, he just said that dangling fishers might not be able to come here. The implication was that hanging fishers could come here at most. Han Fei didn't think realm was a big deal. So what if they were hanging fishers? He could fight against hanging fishers now, which at least proved that he was qualified to enter the abyssal chasm. And if he came in, there must be a way. Otherwise, Ren Tianfei wouldn't let him come here. After all, he had passed the first 2 tests. No matter how shameless Ren Tianfei was, he wouldn't throw the indestructible body and candle dragon blood away like toys, right? At this time, Han Fei was wondering if he could travel underwater since the hurricane was so strong. However, on second thought, it was okay above the sea, where the field of vision was wide. But at this time, the bottom of the sea was not necessarily so calm. Judging from the marine creatures that jumped out of the sky from time to time, the bottom of the sea must be turbulent. Standing at the bow of the boat, Han Fei perceived the dynamics of the bottom of the sea and found that the seawater here seemed to be able to block perception. His perception range of 5,000 meters could only be perceived 500 meters here. Even at a depth of 500 meters, Han Fei saw a lot of rare and even exotic creatures. Within the nearest 50 meters from the sea surface, there were mostly some squids, some translucent small fish, and some ferocious and ugly big predatory fish. They were floating with the waves and seemed to be too lazy to swim. Han Fei controlled the wind god boat and moved forward with the wind. Although this level of hurricane and tornado was not weak, it would definitely be a disaster in the level 2 fishery. But here, with Han Fei's current physique, he was not afraid even if he was swept in. The power of the hurricane couldn't shake him. Half a day later, Han Fei traveled another 10,000 kilometers. Along the way, he braved the wind and waves. The wind god boat was like a missile flying in the sky, and scrupulous. Han Fei looked up at the sky. At this moment, waves were rolling everywhere, and the sky couldn't be seen at all as it was shrouded in thick black clouds. He didn't even know whether it was day or night, let alone the sun, the moon, and the stars. He couldn't see anything at all. Under such circumstances, it was neither day nor night. The darkness was more like grayish-black, giving off a very strange feeling. All of a sudden, the wind god boat that was speeding forward suddenly slowed down. Han Fei rushed forward in a daze. Huh? What happened? Han Fei was still injecting spiritual energy into the fishing boat, but no matter how hard he tried, the wind god boat still wouldn't move. Holy sh**t, it can fail too? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Are you king kidding me? This is a floating stone. Although he didn't know what the levitating stone was, could it really be a magnetic field? But this levitating stone didn't look like something magnetic at all. Han Fei stopped injecting spiritual energy and looked around. Except for the scattered tornadoes, there was only darkness waiting for him in front of Han Fei. Could it be that I have to swim over? Han Fei let the wind god boat rise and fall on the waves and opened the sea map of the abyssal chasm given by Old Bai in his hand. On the sea map, Han Fei soon found the Hurricane Sea area where he was. Because this place was marked, a circle of hurricanes and tornadoes encircled this area. And under this sea area, there were secret realms everywhere. Han Fei looked around casually and found as many as 20 or 30 secret realms. Around the abyssal chasm, there were hundreds of secret realms scattered in this Hurricane Sea area. If he continued to move forward, the number of secret realms would decrease exponentially. After crossing the Hurricane Sea area, there were no more than 6 secret realms left. Among these 6 secret realms, 3 were in the big crack of the abyssal chasm. At this moment, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. This map is so king precious. If others entered the abyssal chasm, they would almost certainly die. The map in his school even marked the secret realms in the big crack. God knew which weirdo in the school had explored here. He even had the time to draw a map. Han Fei hesitated for a moment, put away the fishing boat, and dove into the water. He didn't know what happened to Zhang Xuanyu, but the hundreds of secret realms in the Hurricane Sea area were not to be trifled with. If he could be sure of the secret realms, he could dig out a few of them, which would be very valuable. It was very likely that he would dig out something extraordinary. As soon as he entered the sea, Han Fei felt that the sea currents were surging wildly. He also found that the sea currents were completely directionless. Sometimes a huge force pulled him to the left, and sometimes a huge wave pulled him to the right. Sometimes there was a current that was clearly surging towards him, but in the next moment, the current actually flowed backwards and actually sucked him forward. Han Fei released spiritual energy all over his body, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp attached to him. He broke through this weird vortex and swooped down headfirst. Along the way, Han Fei saw those disgusting big fish clearly. Their bodies were blue, their mouths were full of sharp teeth, and there were bite marks on their bodies. Some parts of these strange fish's bodies had been bitten through, but they were still alive. How could they still be fish when half of their bodies were swimming in the sea? These big fish didn't have a high IQ. They rushed up and bit Han Fei. However, how could these ordinary rare big fish be a match for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp? Today's 9-star chains were no longer what they used to be. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp was a legendary creature after all. Any big fish caught by the chains could be twisted into a fried dough twist with a casual twist. Han Fei was watching these fish, and suddenly he was alarmed and leaned to the right. At the moment when his body leaned to the right, a vortex of water rolled past Han Fei. Shit, what's that? Han Fei could be sure that it was definitely not a naturally formed water nest, because it was only a small section. When Han Fei looked back, he found that the water nest had disappeared. Han Fei was vigilant and no longer paid attention to the fish creatures, but dove down seriously all the way. During the process, he encountered no less than 20 strange vortexes. On average, he would encounter one every 2 minutes. When Han Fei dived to a depth of 2,000 meters, he was a little stunned. In front of him, there was still darkness. The feeling of surging waves had long since disappeared. However, the water nests that formed for some reason were still there, and they appeared very frequently. Han Fei frowned. Weird, this place is too weird. Just when he dove cautiously, he suddenly looked up and found that the sea was trembling slightly. Under normal circumstances, he couldn't feel it all. However, in his mind, Han Fei felt the demon purification pot suddenly tremble. Immediately afterward, Han Fei saw that tens of meters away, a big fish that was about to bite him suddenly turned over, belly up, and died. F***ck. That feeling was very strange. Han Fei felt that it might be a kind of sound, but he couldn't hear it at all. At the moment when the big fish died, Han Fei felt that his internal organs suddenly shrank, and goosebumps appeared on his skin. His brain paused for a moment. Ultrasound or infrasound. When Han Fei recovered, his body was falling down. He shivered and covered himself with a spiritual energy protective cover. Just now, he felt the vibration and seemed to have heard something in the illusion, but it was too F***king weak. Therefore, Han Fei's first reaction was infrasound. In the past, Han Fei had read some books about infrasound geomagnetic gravitational force. He couldn't remember how to describe it specifically. Anyway, when strange natural disasters such as earthquakes, storms, and volcanic eruptions occurred in the ocean, a kind of infrasound would vibrate with it. This kind of sound couldn't be heard by human ears, but it was very destructive. It would probably put the seawater in an environment where the vibration frequency was between 6 Hz and 7 Hz. And in this environment, people would feel extremely tired, and their heart and nervous system would be paralyzed. That was what Han Fei felt at that moment, just now. Damn it, should I have stayed on the boat? Wait, I haven't reached the abyssal chasm yet. If it's really so dangerous, then how did the senior in the academy draw the map of the secret realm of the Hurricane Sea area? After about 500 meters, Han Fei finally saw the bottom of the sea. It had to be said that swimming at this depth was simply pseudoscience, superscience, and the nonsense of science fiction. Han Fei didn't see the terrain clearly, nor did he see the secret realm clearly, but he saw groups of blue luminous balls in the seawater one after another. Han Fei swam closer to take a look curiously, only to find that it was not a creature at all, nor a ball, but a sheet as thin as paper, or even without any thickness at all. Han Fei casually hooked a stone from the bottom of the sea and threw it at the blue luminous sheet. However, as soon as the stone was thrown up, it disappeared. F***ck. Chapter 485. Han Fei immediately stepped back and almost peed his pants. The stone sank into the blue luminous film. It was like a portal, but looking at the thousands of blue luminous films around him, Han Fei was a little stunned. There was no such water area on the sea map. Are you F***king kidding me? Han Fei ignored these blue luminous films. Only the heavens knew what this thing was. What would happen if someone fell in? Where would they go? Han Fei moved quickly on the bottom of the sea. After more than an hour, the blue luminous films disappeared, and he felt that he had finally walked out of the sea area covered by the blue luminous films. At this time, he encountered a stone platform, a very, very large square stone platform. Han Fei was overjoyed. This was one of the secret realms. He remembered that there was a place on the fish skin map that was not a small dot, but a small square the size of a dime. Oh, good heavens, the first secret realm is finally here. Without the hexagon starfish, Han Fei had to search for the seal with the half-baked spirit gathering scripture. He swam on this platform for a long time, but he didn't even see a single sea creature. Strange. Han Fei suddenly found that since he encountered the blue luminous films just now, the sea creatures around him seemed to have disappeared, except for the occasional ordinary fish and shrimps swimming around. And there were clams everywhere, so he didn't feel that this sea area was lacking in creatures. But when he got on this huge stone platform, Han Fei felt strange. The stone platform was too empty, and he could see everything around him. There were only some snails lying on it, but no special creatures, not even fish and crabs. How could such a weird thing not attract his attention? However, Just as Han Fei was searching for the secret realm, another wave of weird tremors appeared. This tremor directly made Han Fei narrow his eyes, and his brain went blank for a few seconds. When the weird tremor disappeared, Han Fei immediately opened his eyes. In the end, he was dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. F***CK. Where's the stone platform? Where's my big stone platform? Han Fei was horrified. He was standing in the center of the stone platform just now, but he was hit by a weird tremor. In the blink of an eye, he closed his eyes and opened his eyes again, and then he was in another place. It was like lying on your bed at home, hugging a big black bear to sleep. However, in the blink of an eye, you found yourself lying on another bed in another room with a girl in your arms. Who wouldn't be shocked by this? Han Fei pinched himself, feeling the pain. He looked at the terrain again, only to find that it had changed and he couldn't recognize anything. What else was there to look for? He hurriedly swam to the surface of the sea. The bottom of the sea was too strange, so it was better to swim upstream. It would be best if he could find these small secret realms, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. Anyway, the fishery was so big that there were countless secret realms. Whoever found one more secret realm, or one less, wouldn't make much difference. Even though Han Fei had no idea why he moved to another place, this place seemed more reasonable than the previous one. There were very few creatures here, or rather, no creatures at all. After swimming for a while, Han Fei finally saw a big conch that looked like a chrysanthemum floating in the water. A string of data appeared in his eyes. Name Conchus. Introduction. This is a special migratory conch that likes to live in seaweed and likes to eat the roots of spiritual plants. Because it eats too much grass, sea chrysanthemums grow on its shell. After soaking, it can increase spiritual power. It has strong defense power and can spit out enchanting mist. Level 33, quality, rare, spiritual energy greater than 1,620 points. Effect, long-term consumption is beneficial to broadening the meridians and improving spiritual power. Collectible, sea chrysanthemum, absorbable. Hardly had Han Fei finished reading the information when he saw a large number of golden particles floating in the sea. Han Fei stretched out one hand, and the surrounding seawater gathered, trying to push these golden particles away. However, to Han Fei's surprise, some of the golden particles ignored his water control technique and fell directly beside him. Then, Han Fei saw that Xia Xiaochan was pouting and saying, "I'll let you kiss me. Just one kiss." Han Fei was excited. Who the F***CK could bear this? He went up and was about to kiss her, but before he kissed her, he saw that Xia Xiaochan turned into a ferocious big fish, bearing her fangs. Shoot! When Han Fei came back to his senses, he found that the conchus had run away. It turned out that this temporary illusion was just a life-saving means of the big conchus. Han Fei shuddered all over. What the hell are these things? Ordinary snails all have hallucinations. If I'm not careful, I'll change places. Ren Tianfei, you old turtle, don't let me see you again. After a moment, a figure broke out of the water, and Han Fei stepped on the water and looked around. Huh? Have I passed the hurricane area? No way. It can't be. Han Fei was a little stunned. There were no hurricanes or tornadoes around. The whole sea was calm, and even the sky was glowing with a faint white light. Han Fei was speechless. I was just confused for a moment, and I passed through the hurricane area. That sea area was tens of thousands of kilometers long. Okay? Goodoo. Han Fei swallowed and took out the wind god boat. Han Fei tried to control the wind god boat. As a result, as before, the wind god boat was still in a state of failure. Immediately afterward, Han Fei tried to perceive whether there were any abnormalities under the nearby seawater that he hadn't discovered. However, Han Fei didn't even perceive anything. His spiritual perception didn't even extend half a meter. Shoot, how is this possible? Han Fei was dumbfounded. When he was in the hurricane area, he could at least perceive 500 meters. Although it was 10 times smaller, he could at least perceive it. However, here, he couldn't even use his spiritual power to probe out. How terrifying was this? Just when Han Fei was in a panic, his eyes suddenly turned to the front. In his field of vision, he saw a dark shadow of a ship coming towards him. At that moment, Han Fei only felt goosebumps all over his body. No one had come to this place for a long time. Why did a ship suddenly appear? However, this ship was clearly heading straight for him. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. The blood-drinking knife appeared on his waist. The blue sea wandering dragon dagger was about to come out of his body, and the embroidery needle was held in his hand. The ship came very slowly, and it took several hundred minutes to float to Han Fei. At the first sight of the ship, Han Fei felt that all the hair on his body was almost standing on end. There was no one on this ship at all. The ship was full of seaweed, and some places had even decayed as if it had been abandoned for hundreds of years. But why did such a ship come for him? What did this mean? Was it a real ghost ship? Han Fei certainly didn't believe it. There must be a reason why this abandoned ship came to him. If the reason was not on the ship, then it must be underwater. The embroidery needle in Han Fei's hand was immediately replaced by the blue sea wandering dragon rod, and he threw the hook into the water smoothly. However, what made the corners of Han Fei's mouth twitch was that it had really become a fishing game. His spiritual power couldn't penetrate the fishing hook. This was different from using spiritual perception directly. When using a fishing hook, the fishing hook was almost a part of his body, equivalent to his eyes. Now, he couldn't see the situation around the fishing hook, which was equivalent to being blind. However, Han Fei didn't immediately put away the fishing rod, but held the fishing rod with his left hand and then poked the abandoned fishing boat full of seaweed next to his fishing boat with the embroidery needle. Creak, creak. Han Fei curled his lips. Why are you still creaking? Why are you still creaking? Although Han Fei was cursing, he still found something special. How heavy was the embroidery needle? How strong was his strength? After being poked by him for a long time, the ship only creaked but was not broken, which showed that the quality of the ship itself was actually good. Another situation was that he pressed hard against the side of the fishing boat, but he couldn't push it away from him. This was the weird part. Han Fei suddenly got up. The sea was too calm. The floating stone couldn't be used at all, and the fishing boat couldn't move. Therefore, he needed to consider whether he should take this abandoned fishing boat or not. Of course, he had another choice. That was to jump into the water and see for himself what was underwater. After thinking about it again and again, Han Fei remembered that when he just came up from the sea, he only encountered a chrysanthemum conch. There shouldn't be anything else at the bottom of the water, right? He didn't believe that with his current strength, there was something underwater that could kill him. So he took a deep breath. I'd like to see what tricks you're playing. Chapter 486. Han Fei didn't know why, but the first thing he thought of in such a weird place was to run away. But at this moment, in a situation where he knew nothing, he wanted to take a look. Han Fei clenched his fists subconsciously, and a layer of faint golden light covered his fists. He activated the art of invincibility subconsciously. Plop! The moment he entered the water, Han Fei felt cold and a little creeped out. A few minutes ago, he just came out of the water and didn't have this feeling. Just because an abandoned fishing boat came over, he suddenly had such a change? Han Fei immediately looked down the abandoned fishing boat. However, what he saw was more than creeped out. Han Fei felt that he was about to explode. In Han Fei's vision, there was a person at the bottom of the abandoned fishing boat. To be precise, it was not a person at all. It had been turned into a mummy, with only 2 big black holes left in its eyes, and its bones were exposed. There was no flesh at all. Who are you? Before the person answered, information was already displayed in Han Fei's eyes. Name, Ghost Ferryman. Introduction, a corpse controlled by an unknown force, with copper skin and iron bones. No one below the level of hanging fisher can shake it. It's a kind of undead creature, but it has no intelligence at all and only exists as an underwater ferryman. Level, none. Quality, none. Contains spiritual energy, none. Unabsorbable. Han Fei's eyelids kept twitching, and he tried to calm himself down. An undead creature? No one below the level of hanging fisher can shake it, but I'm afraid I can. At this moment, Han Fei was no longer thinking about whether to kill this ghost ferryman or not, but the word ferryman. Since it was a ferryman, there must be an end point and a direction, right? Besides, Wasn't it necessary to ferry people because a certain section of the river couldn't be passed at all? Han Fei thought for a moment and jumped out of the water again. Then, Han Fei put away the wind god boat and jumped onto the ghost boat. Creak! Han Fei frowned in disgust and stepped on the unknown seaweed. As soon as he stepped on it, a green, sticky, turbid liquid immediately flowed out. This thing was more like some kind of moss than seaweed. The demon purification pot probably didn't even bother to prompt the information of this thing. Han Fei glanced at the fishing boat. The cabin had long been damaged. The wood had collapsed and was covered with this green moss. The fish cabin had long been damaged, and so had the planks nearby. From above, he could see down. Even the bottom of the boat was broken. Han Fei could even see the 2 ribs of the ferryman through the bottom of the boat. Damn it, since I'm already here, I'll just take things as they come. The abandoned fishing boat under his feet had already begun to move, sailing steadily into the darkness in the distance on the calm surface of the sea that only slightly undulated. Han Fei had been standing on the bow of the boat like a statue with one hand on his waist. If anything happened, he could draw his saber. Just like that, he stood there quietly for 6 hours. Although the speed of the fishing boat was slow, it had traveled about 2,000 kilometers. Han Fei guessed that this might be close to the core of the abyssal chasm. Anyway, it was impossible for him to stay 20,000 kilometers away. Han Fei estimated that he was now around 10,000 to 15,000 kilometers away. This was not a baseless guess. After crossing the Hurricane Sea, he was already within 20,000 kilometers of the abyssal chasm. And, according to the current, if he was close to the Hurricane Sea, the water surface couldn't be so flat. Gulp! Suddenly, Han Fei looked down at his belly. He didn't know when, but Han Fei always felt that there seemed to be something wrong with him. When his stomach growled, he suddenly found that he was hungry. The feeling of hunger Han Fei hadn't felt for a long time, because as long as there was spiritual energy, people would not feel hungry. Don't be fooled by the fact that this group of people had to cook every day in school. In fact, it was just to satisfy a momentary desire for good food. In fact, they wouldn't feel hungry even if they didn't eat. They wouldn't feel full even if they ate a lot. As long as they moved their spiritual energy, the food could be digested. However, at this moment, Han Fei was full of spiritual energy. He glanced at the sky. There were spiritual energy spots scattered, and there were many of them. However, since there was plenty of spiritual energy, why did he feel hungry? While Han Fei was thinking, he saw a school of blue fish swimming across the sea. Splash! Han Fei also saw one of them jump out of the sea. It was about the size of a palm, blue all over, and its fins were beautiful like wrinkled petals. Its belly was as round as a pregnant woman's, which was surprising. What fish? There was no information appearing in his eyes, which made Han Fei's heart tighten. This kind of small fish didn't seem to have a high level. Han Fei even doubted that they even had combat power. Not to mention the current demon purification pot. Even if it was the old demon purification pot, it wouldn't have any problem reading its information, but the fact was in front of him. This group of blue fish swam happily in front of his eyes, and from time to time, they looked at him with their eyes. Han Fei immediately chuckled. I'm being nice to you, aren't I? Immediately, he took out his fishing rod and cast the hook at them. Han Fei thought that he could easily catch them with hook kiss, flash hook, or thousand twining. However, when the hook fell into the water, these small fish directly turned into rays of blue light, scattering in the sea like streams of light, and the fishing rod didn't know where to start. Han Fei tried several times to hook directly at the blue light, but every time he felt that he had hooked it, no fish took the bait. Huh, interesting. Taste the power of my void-breaking technique. Han Fei put away the fishing rod, and after a while, these small blue fish changed from blue light to normal. Han Fei cast the hook again. This time, the hook suddenly appeared on the heads of the small blue fish, and they had no time to turn into light. Han Fei grinned. Arrogant, you still got me, didn't you? However, as soon as Han Fei smiled, he froze in the next second. The small blue fish on the hook exploded with a bang. There was not the slightest bit of power, just a simple explosion. It seemed to be saying, Even if I explode myself, I won't let you succeed. A patch of light blue, sticky stuff splashed on Han Fei's body. Han Fei put away the fishing rod in disgust and didn't plan to fish anymore. When he was about to shake off these sticky things, he suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Huh, fish roe?" Fish roe was naturally fish eggs, and the uncooked fish eggs were like small grains of sand, round and round. However, what surprised Han Fei was that there were so many fish roe in the belly of this fish. Han Fei was amazed and sighed again. There were so many strange things in the world. Each of these small blue fish had a round belly. What do they eat to grow up? Han Fei was just a little curious and didn't intend to look into it. After all, these small blue fish didn't pose any threat to him. After another hour, Han Fei frowned again. He was getting hungrier and hungrier, and he felt that the energy in his body was flowing away. Something's wrong. Han Fei's expression slowly became serious. Energy was flowing away. It had been more than a day since he entered the abyssal chasm. In just over a day, the energy contained in his body was gone. What kind of joke was this? Han Fei didn't immediately set up the big pot to eat, but immediately filled his body with spiritual energy. Then he wrapped himself with spiritual energy to see if he would be hungry again. Sure enough, after an hour, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. The spiritual energy protective cover worked. During the 2 hours of the spiritual energy protective cover, Han Fei didn't feel any hungrier. However, there was another problem. How long could a normal dangling fisher last with a spiritual energy protective cover? In fact, when Han Fei gradually grew up, he found that the energy consumed by a spiritual energy protective cover actually increased with the growth of his realm and level. But this increase was not inevitable and was completely controllable. For example, a fisher needed 50 points of spiritual energy to support a spiritual energy protective cover. Then, a fishing master also needed 50 points of spiritual energy to support a spiritual energy protective cover. But the 50 points of spiritual energy of a fishing master were much more practical and resilient than that of a fisher. Even if the effect of the same 50 points of spiritual energy protective cover was doubled, it was still not enough to withstand a blow from a master of the same level. Therefore, when fighting with others, the spiritual energy protective cover was usually instilled with spiritual energy according to the strength of the opponent. But Han Fei calculated that he needed 50 points of spiritual energy per breath, so an hour was at least 1,000 seconds. In that case, it would consume 50,000 points of spiritual energy in 2 hours. Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Even an ordinary spirit gatherer wouldn't be able to support this. If he wasn't a spirit gatherer, how long could he last with a spiritual energy protective cover? Chapter 487. The best way Han Fei could think of was for 2 spirit gatherers to stand face to face and transmit spiritual energy to each other. In this way, both sides could make use of the spiritual energy between heaven and earth to keep each other covered with a spiritual energy protective cover. But even with this method, it still didn't work. In theory, a spirit gatherer was just a spiritual energy bridging device, using himself as a conductor to control the direction of spiritual energy. But this didn't mean that the spiritual energy passing through his body must be his. On the contrary, a spirit gatherer had to keep gathering spiritual energy, which was actually constantly consuming the spiritual energy in his body. Although the consumption was small, it would eventually be exhausted, and it would definitely be consumed within 8 hours or even less. Because a spirit gatherer constantly gathered spiritual energy, not only would he consume spiritual energy, but his spiritual power would also be exhausted. No wonder. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up, revealing a smile. No wonder there was almost no way out of the abyssal chasm. It would be strange if there was a way out. The energy in his body disappeared inexplicably, and his spiritual energy was not enough to support him for a few hours. What could he do if he didn't die? If he went out immediately when he entered the hurricane area, maybe he could go back safely. But if he was accidentally involved in this damn place, the fishing boat wouldn't move. If the fishing boat couldn't move, they would starve to death in minutes. Even if he swam back, who the hell had the ability to swim tens of thousands of miles in a few hours? Maybe he would starve to death while he was swimming. When Han Fei removed the spiritual energy protective cover, after a while, the feeling of hunger hit him again. However, Han Fei still didn't eat, but waited, wanting to see how much energy he could bear. However, after only 2 hours, Han Fei couldn't bear it anymore. He took out a pile of small dried fish and stuffed them into his mouth. Originally, Han Fei wanted to cook. Looking at the sticky seaweed on this small broken boat, he had no desire to eat, so he could only take out the small dried fish to eat. There was still a yellow-blooded sea cucumber in the pot of Forge the Universe that he hadn't eaten yet. As long as he took a bite of that thing, he could probably last for half a day, 12 hours. According to Han Fei's calculation, with his tough physique, he could hold on for about 6 hours, and then he would feel a little hungry. By the 8th hour, the hunger was getting stronger. By the 10th hour, he was already craving for food. By the 12th hour, he had reached the point where he had no choice but to eat. Han Fei suspected that most of the people who came in earlier must have been starved to death. However, he didn't panic at all. The food in Forge the Universe was piled up like a mountain. There were still hundreds of yellow-blooded sea cucumbers. Even if he had to swim, he could easily swim out. 2 days later, Han Fei didn't despise this dirty fishing boat anymore. After floating on the sea for 2 whole days, apart from those blue little fish, he didn't even see the shadow of a F** king person. Han Fei couldn't help but shout at the hole in the cabin, "Hey, hey you, can't you move faster?" I'm not bragging, but even if I were to swim by myself, I would still be faster than you. It's been almost 3 days. Why are you getting slower and slower? Why the F*** are you slowing down? Han Fei was speechless. At the beginning, the ferryman was really fast. Especially in the first 10 hours, it traveled nearly 5,000 kilometers. Then the speed was halved, then halved again, halved again. Damn, now it was as slow as a F** king tractor. How could Han Fei not be anxious? Just when Han Fei was cursing and preparing to swim in the sea, a wisp of smoke suddenly floated past his eyes. Han Fei looked around. It was indeed smoke, but not much. But then, he saw a large expanse of gray smoke in front of him. Han Fei was shocked. Finally, the scene was going to change. Han Fei was very excited. At this time, it was not the time to worry about danger at all. According to the slow posture of this ferryman, a living person would have starved to death long ago. The new scene might be dangerous, but it might also be a turning point. Han Fei didn't believe that death was certain. He hadn't entered the big crack of the abyssal chasm yet. How could it be certain? After half an hour, the abandoned fishing boat slowly entered the thick fog. Han Fei found that the range of his vision was still good. He could see about 20 meters away. Plop! Soon after he entered the mist, Han Fei heard the sound of something falling down. He immediately knew that it was the sound of the blue fish jumping on the sea. However, in this fog, the frequency of their jumping was even more frequent. After traveling for about hundreds of meters, Han Fei suddenly pulled up the fishing hook and shot it out with a swish. When he retracted the fishing hook, he saw a pale yellow insect with wings hanging on the hook. In his eyes, information appeared. Name: yellow-winged flying insect. Introduction: a kind of insect that lives on the sea surface. It likes to eat energy and carrion. It is non-aggressive and will sting. When it falls on people, it will absorb energy. It is extremely stupid and has no sense of revenge. It is one of the baits that some fish in the sea like. Level 12, quality rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 92 points, effect, inedible, absorbable. Oh, interesting, there's even bait. Is it a reward for holding on for 3 days? Han Fei immediately hung the yellow-winged flying insect on the fishing hook, threw it into the water, and began to fish. There was no need for any fishing skill at all. As soon as the bait fell for less than 2 seconds, Han Fei felt a violent bite. Ooh! In the blink of an eye, a palm-sized blue fish was caught by Han Fei. In order to prevent this blue fish from suddenly exploding, Han Fei also specially turned on a spiritual energy protective cover. However, this time, Han Fei was surprised. He didn't expect that this blue fish didn't explode, but just flapped its tail and held its round belly, looking silly. Han Fei turned this palm-sized fish over and over again. It seemed to be no different from ordinary fish, except for its blue whole body, beautiful fins, and pointed mouth. It seemed to have no special features. Han Fei was thinking about one thing. Can this small fish be eaten? He felt a little reluctant to eat it. After all, this fish was blue. He couldn't eat it like a blueberry, could he? If he ate a mouthful of blue and then stuck out his tongue, wouldn't it be scary? Although Han Fei didn't intend to eat it, he wrapped it with spiritual energy. After a few minutes, the small fish was cooked and emitted a tempting fragrance. The blood-drinking knife was completely reduced to a kitchen knife. Han Fei directly cut open the small fish's intestines and took out a large ball of blue fish roe. After taking out the fish roe, Han Fei threw the small blue fish away. Han Fei pinched the fish roe, then put it to his mouth and smelled it. He was very sure that the so-called fragrance just now was emitted by this fish roe. Hey, sure enough, the fish roe is the key. Han Fei threw away the fish roe casually. From the beginning, he felt that there was something wrong. Along the way, there were no creatures except this blue fish, which shouldn't be the case. After all, when he was in the hurricane area, all kinds of creatures often jumped out of the sea, but then they all disappeared. Therefore, shortly after Han Fei entered this sea area, he began to suspect that there was something wrong with this blue fish. However, at that time, he couldn't catch the blue fish at all, so he didn't know what the problem was. Now, looking at the yellow-winged flying insects that often flew by in the mist, Han Fei seemed to have some understanding. Only by using this insect as bait could he catch the little blue fish. Ordinary people either couldn't bear the hunger during the 3 days of the ferry and went to the sea to look for food, or even if they could survive until here, they would almost starve to death. When people were on the verge of starvation, they couldn't resist the temptation of food at all. Therefore, Han Fei was sure that there was something wrong with this blue fish. They were deliberately luring him to eat them. Unfortunately, Han Fei laughed with his hands on his hips. Interesting. Is this the specialty of this sea area? If that's the case, there should be other abandoned specter ships nearby. Han Fei had a guess in his heart, and he needed to confirm it. And the first step to confirm it was to wait for the next ghost ship. At this moment, Han Fei was not in a hurry. He had already understood where the real danger in this sea area came from. All he needed to do now was wait patiently. After all, the reason why a ferryman was called a ferryman was that there must be a destination for the ferryman. Han Fei took out a large pot, grabbed a yellow-blooded sea cucumber, sliced it, chopped it with scallions, oil, salt, and spiritual fruit as supplementary ingredients. He was ready to eat while waiting. Chapter 488. When Han Fei encountered another ghost ship, it was the 6th hour after he entered the fog area. At this moment, Han Fei jumped into the water again. Just as he had expected, there was also a specter ferryman under the specter ship. However, this ghost ship went to the periphery. Han Fei guessed that it should be waiting for the next human to enter the sea area. In this way, Han Fei encountered 7 such ghost ships in 2 days. Han Fei even found a human skeleton on one of the fishing boats. Han Fei guessed that the person must have starved to death on the way in or out of the ghost ship. Of course, the latter was more likely. If he couldn't bear the hunger when he came in, he would definitely dive to the bottom of the sea as soon as possible. In this way, he might have a chance. The reason why Han Fei didn't dive into the water on the way here was not because he was afraid, but because once he entered the water, the ghost ferryman would carry the abandoned fishing boat away. At that time, wouldn't he have to swim to death in this weird sea area? After all, in this damn place, who knew where was north, south, east, and west? If he swam in the wrong direction, who could he cry to? At this moment, Han Fei murmured, Where the hell can't you go? Why are you running here? I only hope your sea-swallowing seashell is full of food. Otherwise, I really don't know if you can survive for such a long time. On the 3rd day, Han Fei was eating sea cucumber potato chips. The way to make this thing was simple. He cut the sea cucumber into slices, mixed it with various seasonings, and cooked it. When it was cooked, he fished it out and drained the water with the water control technique, so the sea cucumber potato chips were formed. This was a way of eating that Han Fei suddenly thought of in this sea area that could swallow energy. After all, the energy stored in the human body was limited, and it was different to turn it into potato chips. If you want to absorb energy, just do it. Anyway, I have plenty of potato chips. Crack. Han Fei suddenly curled up the corners of his mouth. See, the fun is finally coming. Crack. Crack. Han Fei hurriedly stuffed the potato chips into his mouth, finished them in 2 bites, and crossed his arms, waiting for something in the distance to come over. Han Fei could not see, but he could hear the sound of fishes leaping out of the water. To be able to cause such a commotion, it had to be a large ship. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the same time, Han Fei looked around and found a large number of yellow-winged flying insects flying around, and some even landed on him. However, when Han Fei shook his spiritual energy and killed a large number of them, not many yellow-winged flying insects flew to him. Woo-woo, wallala. The sea was surging, and the waves were rising and falling. Han Fei sensed that the ghost ferryman under the boat was no longer exerting force, and the boat naturally stopped. Immediately afterward, after about 10 minutes, Han Fei saw a huge wooden boat passing by. This is a dragon boat? Although this big ship had decayed, Han Fei could still see it. To be precise, he recognized the interlocking spirit gathering formation on the wooden board. Although a large portion of the spirit gathering formation had been destroyed, traces of the carvings were still there. Xiao! Han Fei swung the rod and felt the hook fall on the dragon boat. So he stepped on the hull, jumped up. Bam! When Han Fei landed on the deck of the dragon boat, he frowned. The first thing he saw was an incomplete skeleton on the deck not far from him. Han Fei didn't move, but looked up to the sky and shouted, Zhang. Xuanyu. You. Han Fei's voice spread very far, but could still be heard dozens of kilometers away. He didn't expect to find Zhang Xuanyu so soon. But where was this guy most likely to go? That was definitely on this dragon boat. Clatter. Kacha. Han Fei heard the sound of wood breaking, followed by the sound of footsteps, and knew that someone was coming. Sure enough, there are still people alive. Han Fei couldn't help but be a little curious. How did these people survive? By rights, they should have nothing to eat. Did he guess wrong? Was that little blue fish really edible? No way. If he guessed right, that little blue fish shouldn't be edible. Zhang Xuanyu. Han Fei shouted again without any scruples. He didn't believe that in this sea area, on this dragon boat, there would be an existence stronger than him. He had abundant spiritual energy, and his strength was at its peak. Even a hanging fisher wouldn't dare to say that he could kill him, let alone a dragon boat that had disappeared in the abyssal chasm for decades. Hiss. Oh. For a time, all kinds of strange sounds rang out. Han Fei was walking forward along the deck. After walking less than 500 meters, he saw a woman with disheveled hair standing in front of him. Han Fei couldn't see the woman's appearance clearly, but she looked thin and bony, and even her shoes were broken and half of her feet were exposed. When he saw the sole of her foot, Han Fei frowned. Only skin and bones were left. Is this person still alive? Han Fei didn't stop, but continued to walk forward. Hey, girl, do you mind being my guide? However, when the woman raised her face, Han Fei almost cursed it out loud. Was that a human face? It was equivalent to a skeleton. There was no flesh on her face. There was only skin left. But in this woman's eyes, there was still blue light. When she bared her teeth, Han Fei saw those blue teeth, and he was shocked. Huh, did these people really eat the blue fish? Han Fei frowned. You should have guessed it. Eliminating all the impossible, the remaining answer, no matter how impossible, was the answer. Only the blue fish could be eaten here. Since these people survived, they must have eaten a lot. Although the answer seemed to be a little different from the one he guessed, the result was almost the same. Han Fei wasn't sure if this person was crazy or not. Han Fei flicked out a yellow-blooded sea cucumber potato chip. The woman, who was still looking at Han Fei, pounced on it and bit it in her mouth when she saw the chip. Immediately afterward, The woman trembled all over, and Han Fei saw a flash of spiritual energy on her body. Bam! The woman immediately rushed over. The nails on her hands had already fallen off, and her fingers were all white. However, even in this state, this woman still knew how to use combat skills. At the moment when she was about to touch Han Fei, a dagger strangely appeared at Han Fei's chin. Han Fei tilted his head slightly, and a blue sea wandering dragon dagger appeared in his hand. With a casual slap, he pushed her back dozens of steps. Then, with a cold face, Han Fei threw out another chip. "Girl, are you still normal? Can you talk?" Seeing that Han Fei was difficult to deal with, the woman pounced on the chip again. Han Fei confirmed that 2 yellow-blooded sea cucumber potato chips were definitely worth the energy contained in dozens of blue fish. The spiritual energy on this woman emerged again. This time, Han Fei clearly saw that the wrinkled skin on her body was slightly better. Seeing this scene, Han Fei's eyes lit up. This person seemed to be a little conscious. Swish! Swish! Han Fei flicked out 3 more chips, all of which were quickly bitten by the woman. The speed was so fast that Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. This didn't look like an action that a skinny woman could do. Then Han Fei pointed his finger, and a wisp of spiritual energy poured directly into the woman's body. At the next moment, the skin on the woman's fingers was growing rapidly, and the flesh and blood of her body were also growing rapidly. Then Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on her again. The woman trembled all over and let out a nah. Han Fei took a long breath. "You can still make a sound. It seems that you still have a chance to recover." The woman looked at Han Fei with difficulty, and a glimmer of light flashed in her dry eyes. Go, huh?" Han Fei continued to throw 2 more chips to her, then tilted his head and leaned sideways, and a figure immediately pounced over. Han Fei didn't make a move. These people were already so pitiful. He wouldn't kill them at this time. However, although Han Fei didn't make a move, the woman just now did. The woman, who had recovered a little energy, seemed to have a little combat power. She turned over her hand and stabbed the knife into the heart of the figure that pounced over. Han Fei frowned. "Why did you kill it?" However, the woman said with difficulty, "Eat the 3rd chapter." Asking for votes. The author said, "Designed according to a real, unsolved mystery. The truth is unknown." End of this chapter. Chapter 489. Han Fei looked at the skinny man whose heart was pierced by the woman and couldn't help frowning. "Do you mean cannibalism?" Although Han Fei often said that he cooked people and ate them when he and Xia Xiaochan pretended to be the black and white ghosts, that was just an act after all. But at this moment, when Han Fei heard that these people really ate people, he suddenly felt creeped out. No wonder, when I first boarded the boat, the corpse I saw was incomplete. It turns out, Han Fei heard the sound around him getting more and more intense, and many people seemed to be running wildly. He didn't know if the woman had regained a little consciousness, but she seemed to have been struggling. However, when the footsteps of other people became clearer and clearer, the woman suddenly rushed toward Han Fei. Han Fei was considering whether to attack. This woman's strength was roughly around that of a junior dangling fisher, and he had just given her some potato chips. She couldn't hurt him, so Han Fei didn't attack her. The woman suddenly pulled Han Fei up and ran into a door on the side of the dragon boat. Han Fei hadn't considered whether to follow this woman or not. However, seeing that she didn't seem to be a bad person, he didn't break free. The 2 of them turned all the way and soon ran to a staircase inside the cabin on the 1st floor. However, 3 skinny people rushed towards them. One of them was also a woman, missing an arm. At this moment, when the 3 of them saw Han Fei, they subconsciously took out their weapons. Although they seemed to be crazy now, their fighting instincts were still there. Besides, this place would only make people hungry, but there was no shortage of spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Therefore, when fighting, these people could also burst out their spiritual energy. The woman holding Han Fei's hand roared at the 3 of them. At the same time, dozens of knife lights flashed out from the dagger in her hand. Unfortunately, her strength had recovered too little, so she was no match for these 3 people at all. Seeing this, Han Fei casually punched out. The golden fist mark exploded in the air, directly shaking the three people on the opposite side away. Han Fei didn't kill them, but simply shook them away. However, the running sound behind them became more and more intense. A large amount of debris was knocked over, and roars sounded one after another. Seeing this situation, Han Fei couldn't help but be a little speechless. If you're on the ship, at least give me a response. The woman pulled Han Fei in horror and continued to run up. However, there were more and more people coming from all directions. When they reached the middle of the second floor of the dragon boat, there were no less than hundreds of people surrounding them. Han Fei frowned slightly, waved his hand, and threw over 100 potato chips. These people went crazy when they saw the food. Roar! Bang! Bang! These people collided with each other and fought with each other. How much energy did the yellow-blooded sea cucumber contain? They were all from the level 3 fishery, so of course they could feel it. Han Fei was a little regretful. These people were fighting and killing each other. They couldn't help but fight for food. Those who didn't grab it rushed at Han Fei again. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei's fists glowed with golden light, and he punched them away one by one. Then, he grabbed the woman with one hand and ran, asking, "Where are you taking me? To the top floor?" Han Fei's speed was much faster than this woman's, and he didn't know how many people he had punched away. Anyway, when Han Fei just stepped on the third floor of the cabin, he didn't run into the cabin, but ran to the deck. Boom! The outer wall of the dragon boat was directly punched out by Han Fei. Han Fei roared, "Zhang Xuanyu, get the F*CK out of here. Either you shout and I'll come to you, or you come to the top floor to find me." Then Han Fei waved his hand and threw the fishing rod up. Before he went up, Han Fei suddenly felt a pain in his arm. He looked down, only to see that the woman he was carrying was biting his forearm and seemed to have lost her mind again. Damn it, Han Fei was speechless. Do you think your teeth are ultra-quality spiritual energy? Do you want to eat me? Swish! Swish! Han Fei soon came to the top of the dragon boat, and this woman had already started to attack Han Fei, and the dagger had been stabbed into his chest. Bam! Han Fei's spiritual energy shook and shook her away. Then, he handed over 2 pieces of potato chips. "Do you want to eat? You tell me. Why do you have to eat?" Han Fei felt that he could save this woman first. At that time, the situation on this dragon boat should be clear. After eating 2 pieces of potato chips, the woman struggled again. But this time, Han Fei took out dozens of potato chips and gave them to her. "If you want to eat, I have plenty of them. Just tell me." The woman seemed to be in pain. Her whole body was trembling, and then she knelt on the ground. Han Fei saw that her flesh and blood were recovering. Although she was still thin, there was a small circle of flesh on her body. Give me." Seeing that she could speak again, Han Fei threw dozens of potato chips at once. The woman's reaction was obviously a lot faster. She stuffed all 10 chips in her mouth in one go, almost as if she was stuffing them. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei was a little annoyed. The energy in this woman's body was rolling, and her flesh and blood were recovering. However, someone had already come at this moment. Swish! Swish! This time, a battle bow shot over, and a big sword swept across the sky. Comparable to an advanced dangling fisher? So powerful? In the mist, Han Fei easily blocked the spiritual energy arrows and the big sword in the sky, and then suddenly shouted, "Get out! There's still a conscious person on this boat, isn't there?" However, there was only sound around, and no one was in sight. Han Fei's face changed slightly. Those people were just testing him just now. This trick at least showed that there were indeed people who were not crazy. Han Fei grinned. "You don't want to come?" Han Fei took out a large pot and began to stir-fry sea cucumbers. When the rich fragrance began to spread on the top floor of the dragon boat, there were roars one after another. The woman who was saved by Han Fei was stunned at this moment. Although her flesh and blood were still recovering, her instinct made her rush towards Han Fei. However, Han Fei snorted coldly. "Stop!" Han Fei's eyes turned cold. "I can give it to you, but you can't take it, let alone lead the way." The woman was frightened by Han Fei's eyes. She knew that Han Fei was strong and she couldn't beat him. Besides, at this moment, she had recovered a little. Although she really wanted to eat, she still held back and just stared at the pot. Han Fei said loudly, "Everyone who is not crazy, listen to me. If you want to eat, you can. Come out and talk to me." Hiss, hiss. Han Fei heard that many people around seemed to want to rush over, but they were stunned by the roars. After a while, Han Fei saw a thin man walk out of the mist. This man's eyes were not cloudy. Although he looked sallow and muscular and extremely malnourished, he was still rational. "Brother, I want to talk to you." This voice was extremely hoarse, as if there was a mouthful of phlegm stuck in his throat. Han Fei went straight to the point. "Have there been any new people on the dragon boat recently?" "Yes, there are 13, 9 of whom are dead." Han Fei asked, "Where are the dead people? Where are the living people?" The thin man was silent for a while. "You should know the dead people. As for the living, they are at the bottom." Han Fei frowned. "The bottom?" The thin man nodded. "The bottom, where the dragon boat used to raise contractual spiritual beasts. So people have seals on them, blocking that area." But what?" The thin man shook his head. "But their seals won't last long. In 3 days at most, the seals will be broken." Han Fei's eyes flashed. "How did you survive? How long have you lived?" The lean man raised his head and glanced at Han Fei. "I have been here for 4 months. You don't want to know how I survived." Then the man looked at the woman Han Fei saved and shook his head. "You can't save her. Although her flesh and blood are recovering, she has gone crazy. Even if she can occasionally regain her consciousness, it won't last long. She can't recover if she doesn't get out of here. Even if she gets out of here, she may not recover." Han Fei glanced at the woman, only to find that her eyes were still staring at the big pot, and saliva was flowing from the corner of her mouth. There was fanaticism, pain, and struggle in her eyes. Han Fei frowned. "How many people are on this dragon boat?" The thin man shook his head slightly. "I don't know. Thousands of people there should be." Chapter 490. When Han Fei heard the number of thousands of people, he was very shocked. He asked subconsciously, "So many? Many?" The lean man looked back with difficulty. "When this dragon boat came in, there were 180,000 people on board. Do you know how many of those people are left?" 21. Han Fei took a deep breath. He quickly recalled the time when this dragon boat came in. It seemed to have been 15 years of history. Han Fei couldn't help but be amazed. What on earth had these people experienced to survive for 15 years in this environment? Han Fei threw the cauldron, and a large pot of yellow-blooded sea cucumber wrapped in seawater flew to the lean man. "Take me to the bottom of the boat." The lean man immediately caught it with his swallowing seashell and then roared. Immediately afterward, Han Fei saw one thin man and woman after another coming up to share the food. The lean man said shamefully, "Sorry, I can't take you to the bottom of the boat. We will all die." Han Fei frowned. However, before he asked in detail, he saw a strange scene. To Han Fei's surprise, these people didn't panic at all. However, many people were missing an arm. Everyone grabbed a piece of yellow-blooded sea cucumber in an orderly manner and then took a bite. Even though they were reluctant to do so, they still only took a bite. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. "Them?" The lean man smiled bitterly. "If you want to survive, you have to follow the rules and be united. Those who don't follow the rules and are not united have either been eaten, lost, jumped off the boat to escape, or become lunatics." Han Fei sighed. "Don't you eat the little blue fish?" The lean man nodded. "We eat it, but we won't eat it crazily. That's courting death." Although Han Fei wanted to know this story, obviously, it would be very long, and he had no time to listen to it. Han Fei looked at the woman who was still struggling and asked, "What will you do to her?" The lean man glanced at her and said, "She has eaten too many small blue fish. We need to tie her up. We need to tie her up and wait for her to recover by her own will. If she can't recover, she will still be banished to the 4th floor." Han Fei took a breath and ignored this woman. There must be a reason why they did this. Han Fei put away the cauldron and turned to leave. After taking a few steps, he suddenly turned around and asked, "Hey, what's your name?" "Xiao Sei." When he said the name, The lean man looked up at the sky and said, I don't recommend you go to the bottom. Someone has already mutated and turned into a monster. Han Fei smiled. Ha! Monster! Han Fei jumped down from the top of the cabin on the 5th floor. Bang! As soon as Han Fei landed, he smashed a big hole in the deck. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei pushed back a dozen skinny guys and entered the trading market on the 1st underground floor. However, the current trading market was extremely strange. The various stalls inside had long been destroyed, and some shops had long been opened. Dried bones, tattered clothes, shattered wood, and scattered weapons could be seen on the streets at any time. 10 seconds after Han Fei came in, he saw a pair of blue eyes in a store. Bang! The blue eyes pulled open a broken plank and rushed at Han Fei. When Han Fei saw his appearance clearly, he was surprised to find that this person had turned light blue all over. The hair on his head had disappeared, his hands had turned into sharp claws, and his teeth were as sharp as piranhas' teeth. Damn it, you! Why the hell did you run to the bottom of the dragon boat? Why did you run to the bottom of the dragon boat? On the dragon boat, in a dark corner, the water was splashing. There were several water exchange openings where seawater was flowing in and out. And at the corner of the water cabin, there was a small viewing platform. In the past, this was built for people to choose contractual spiritual beasts, and the area was less than 50 square meters. There were many platforms like this. And on this 50 square meter platform, 3 people were sitting here feebly, and one was lying on the ground, curled up into a ball. Around them was a weird net-shaped seal. Outside the seal, weird blue mutant humans bumped into the seal from time to time. Boom, boom, boom. Among them, a woman smiled bitterly and said, We are really unlucky. If we had known that we were doomed to die, we might as well have fought with them at the beginning. Next to her, a man laughed. Anyway, we are doomed. We have done something great. I'm satisfied that we can break through the flowstone pit. The woman glanced at the person lying on the ground, and then looked at a handsome young man with delicate features. Zhang Xuanyu, we are all going to die. Why don't we throw old Wang out and have some alone time for a few days? The handsome young man didn't speak, but the man next to him said angrily, Sun Ruo, do you want me to die earlier? The girl called Sun Ruo stroked her hair, revealing a rather beautiful little face. She said, Before, I have been busy with cultivation just to become stronger, and I have no time to fall in love. But after entering the level 3 fishery, I was caught by the flowstone pit and had no chance to fall in love. I'm going to die. Can't you help me? Zhang Xuanyu said weakly. Shut up, all of you. Wang Baiwan, why do I feel that your voice is full of energy? Why don't you eat less later? The man's face stiffened. That's impossible. Do you two have the heart to watch me starve to death? Zhang Xuanyu kicked the man's foot. You should have died a long time ago. If it weren't for you, how could I have broken into this damn place? Then Zhang Xuanyu glanced at Sun Ruo. If we were in another place, I would definitely communicate with you in depth. But now I'm so hungry that my chest is sticking to my back. How can I fall in love with you? Sun Ruo giggled with difficulty. If we don't fall in love, we can kiss. Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes. I'm afraid that I can't help but bite hard and eat your lips. Sun Ruo, Zhang Xuanyu struggled to prop himself up with his hands and cursed. I'm a genius after all. I can even dig out a big opportunity in a place like the Flowstone Pit. But now, I'm going to starve to death. This is F*King ridiculous. With that, Zhang Xuanyu took out a crab more than 3 meters long from his sea-swallowing seashell. F*CK, brother, why do you still have food? Wang Baiwan immediately said, Lu Fenfong, get up. There's food. Gulp. Eat. The guy lying on the ground had the skin on his face and stomach drooping. It could be seen that he was very fat before, but now he was so hungry that even his skin was drooping. Zhang Xuanyu moved his body. This is my F*King last food. If I finish it, there will be no more. Sun Ruo screamed. This is the 6th time you have said this. Every time we think we're going to die, you can take out a creature. I really want to grab your sea-swallowing seashell and have a look. Wang Baiwan happily pulled off a crab leg and knocked it with a stick. Lu Fengfang, who was supposed to have fainted from hunger, somehow found the strength to break open the crab shell and suck a big mouthful of the crab roe. Zhang Xuanyu cursed, "Slow down. This is indeed the last bit of food. When the seal is broken, let's fight our way out." Lu Fengfang said in a hoarse voice, "Zhang Xuanyu, I admit that you are awesome. But this is the abyssal chasm. Hundreds of thousands of people on the dragon boats have died. Do you think we can survive being trapped here?" Zhang Xuanyu scoffed. "You're still King alive, aren't you? As long as you are alive, there's a chance to survive. Who knew that this spirit absorption array would be so broken? Otherwise, we would definitely be able to catch some normal creatures." While they were peeling the crabs, the blue mutants nearby roared and ran away. Wang Baiwan exclaimed, "Huh? Have they abandoned us?" Sun Ruo said, "Impossible. They must have gone to kill each other." Zhang Xuanyu was sucking the crab roe and didn't care about the movement at all. He said, "You may not believe it, but I have a brother. I have a brother. Any living creature in the world is a delicacy in his hands. This crab, I'm not bragging, but he can make 108 different patterns, and none of them are the same. I prepared more food in my sea-swallowing seashell. Because of him." Bam! As soon as Zhang Xuanyu bragged, a blue mutant hit the seal with a loud bang, causing the seal to shake several times. Zhang Xuanyu screamed, "F***CK, what a great force. Hurry up and eat. The seal is about to be broken." The four of them hurriedly stuck their heads into the crab shell and began to crazily swallow the crab roe. However, just when the four of them were swallowing crab roe crazily, crunch, accompanied by a crisp chewing sound, a lazy voice sounded. "Yo, you, when I was not here, did you eat this raw every day? You didn't even prepare a pot? TSK, TSK. How could you eat it?" Zhang Xuanyu's body suddenly stiffened and then began to tremble. After a full 10 breaths of time, he finally turned his head back with great difficulty. His tears almost fell from his eyes. "Ow! Fei, I'm starving." Chapter 491. When he saw Zhang Xuanyu, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Zhang Xuanyu was still on this dragon boat. If this stupid guy insisted on going to the ocean alone, Han Fei really didn't know where to look for him. To be honest, Han Fei really didn't know that Zhang Xuanyu must be on the dragon boat. However, as long as he came here with a small boat, where could he go if he didn't get on the dragon boat? Therefore, he felt that Zhang Xuanyu was most likely on the dragon boat. At this moment, this guy stopped eating crabs, and the crab roe in his mouth fell out. With a swish, Zhang Xuanyu removed the seal and wanted to give Han Fei a bear hug. Han Fei quickly dodged and kicked him in disgust. "Go away. I don't want to hug a salivating bastard." "Ha! Ha ha!" Zhang Xuanyu laughed out loud. No one was more excited than him. Anyway, Sun Ruo and the other two were dumbfounded. Zhang Xuanyu hammered Han Fei's chest fiercely. "Fei, let me tell you, if you didn't come, I would have gone out to fight." Han Fei sneered. "Fight? Ironhead fish? Do you want to eat the blue fish? Be careful." While Han Fei was laughing, he heard Wang Baiwan's warning. However, Han Fei punched out without looking back. As spiritual energy gushed out, 7 or 8 blue mutant humans were directly sent flying and rolled several times on the ground. Han Fei grinned. "You know how to seal people?" Zhang Xuanyu looked at the mutant humans that were rushing over in surprise and said in astonishment, "Did you fight your way here?" Han Fei snorted. "Of course. I called you outside, but you couldn't hear me, so I had to fight my way in. I also heard from someone on the top floor that a dozen people went to the bottom floor after boarding the boat." Zhang Xuanyu hurriedly pulled Han Fei over and then waved his hand, and a seal surrounded them. "Come on, my good brother, get something to eat first. I've already eaten a fish." Sun Ruo and the others quickly made way and looked at Han Fei in shock. Until now, they were all dumbfounded. Who the hell knew that someone would suddenly appear out of nowhere? Why did this person come to such a large fishery? Sun Ruo pulled Zhang Xuanyu, looked at Han Fei, and asked cautiously, Who is it?" Zhang Xuanyu's face immediately turned red. My brother Han Fei." Han Fei also looked at them curiously, and Zhang Xuanyu introduced them one by one. Sun Ruo Wang Baiwan, Lu Fenfang. There were many people, but now only the four of us are left. Han Fei nodded slightly. I see. Look at you guys. You only have 20 to 30% of your strength left. TSK, TSK. Does it feel good? Is there something wrong with your brain? Why would you run to the abyssal chasm? Zhang Xuanyu said helplessly. Then I have to find a chance to run somewhere else. Gulp. Lu Fenfang's stomach growled, but she quickly glanced at the big crab on the ground. Before he pounced on it to eat, Han Fei kicked the raw crab out of the seal with one foot. In an instant, a large group of blue mutants pounced forward. Almost instantly, the big crab was dismembered. Even the juices on the ground were licked by a group of people. Hey, you're the only food we have. The faces of Sun Ruo and the others changed, and they immediately looked at Han Fei with a trace of murderous intent. Han Fei said with a faint smile, "Who can tell me? Can this thing be eaten raw?" Sun Ruo's little face turned cold. Do you know how precious food is here? Zhang Xuanyu scratched his head awkwardly, chuckled, and didn't speak. He just sat on the ground and reached out to Han Fei. Han Fei threw his hand, and a pile of yellow-blooded sea cucumber potato chips flew to them. The corners of Zhang Xuanyu's mouth curled up. What kind of eating method is this? How can you still have time to study dishes here? Han Fei sneered. Do you think I am like you? Crunch, crunch, crunch. Sun Ruo and the other two, who were still murderous just now, were now crazily stuffing potato chips into their mouths, for fear that they would be gone if they didn't do it quickly. Han Fei unhurriedly took out the cauldron and grabbed a yellow-blooded sea cucumber and dozens of seasonings. Everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this. Wow! Lu Fenfang exclaimed. Yellow-blooded sea cucumber. This thing is full of energy. Wang Baiwan's body stiffened, and Han Fei felt that this guy would shed tears of happiness at any time. Gulp! I'm sure I'm not dreaming, right? Sun Ruo sat directly on the ground, her legs facing backward, and she couldn't wait to hold this yellow-blooded sea cucumber in her arms. Only Zhang Xuanyu scratched his head. Why don't you do it? Crunch! Han Fei chewed a potato chip, and the blood-drinking knife automatically floated in the air, and then he cut it. The fish oil was poured into the pot, and after a moment, the seasonings rolled into the oil, making a sizzling sound. In the ears of these people, it was simply the most beautiful music in the world. Before the yellow-blooded sea cucumber entered the pot, its fragrance was already overflowing. The strong smell made Sun Ruo and the others burst into tears. When the yellow-blooded sea cucumber was cut into sections and put into the pot, the flames soared into the sky. With a whoosh, Han Fei began to cook. Gulp! Sun Ruo cried, this time for real. Brother, you will be my brother from now on. Lu Fenfang hugged Han Fei's thigh. Brother, don't say anything. My life will be yours from now on. Wang Baiwan drooled and couldn't move his eyes away. Only Zhang Xuanyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Look at you guys. Look at me. Am I crying? Am I panicking? I'm not panicking at all. I'm very calm. Han Fei said contemptuously, Zhang Xuanyu, don't stretch your claws into my pot. Then, of course, it was a gluttonous feast. Of course, it would be better if there weren't so many blue mutants outside the seal. Zhang Xuanyu and the other three had already become gluttonous. Image? Before filling his stomach, Image was all fish *T. Han Fei just ate 2 pieces symbolically and then stopped eating. Occasionally, he stuffed a chip in his mouth and watched the 4 of them devour these yellow-blooded sea cucumbers. Only halfway through, the 4 of them exuded surging energy. Their faces were all red, and their physiques were recovering at an extremely fast speed. Unfortunately, Sun Ruo and the other 2 were too weak, and the strongest, Wang Baiwan, was only a peak-level dangling fisher. The weakest, Sun Ruo, was only an intermediate dangling fisher. However, to Han Fei's surprise, Zhang Xuanyu was still eating. Even if the energy was surging, he didn't stop eating. You are about to break through to an advanced dangling fisher at any time. Zhang Xuanyu said, what do you think? If it weren't for this damn place, I would have broken through long ago. However, Zhang Xuanyu's physique was still incomparable to Han Fei's. Even if the four of them ate a yellow-blooded sea cucumber, there would still be 1/3 left. These people all ate it with their hands. Who knew if there was saliva or something dirty in the pot? Han Fei said disdainfully, "Whoever finishes last will wash the pot." Wash the pot. Lu Fengfang and the other two looked at Han Fei in astonishment. Han Fei blinked and said, I don't eat leftovers. Are you going to throw it away? Sunro suddenly stood up and looked at Han Fei in shock. Zhang Xuanyu was speechless. Sit down. You can stuff the rest into your own swallowing seashells. Huh? Can I? Han Fei waved his hand and said, Take it. I still have a lot more. When they heard this, they were surprised. Who the hell would come to the level 3 fishery and put so much seafood in their swallowing seashells? The swallowing seashells were so small. Shouldn't they be storing treasures? Seeing that their flesh and blood were growing and they were recovering quickly, Han Fei asked, What happened? I only knew that you had an accident in the flowstone pit. I was going to save you, but you broke into the abyssal chasm. So, I went to find Xia Xiaochang first. Zhang Xuanyu smiled bitterly. I was too unlucky. After listening to Zhang Xuanyu for a long time, Han Fei learned that the flowstone pit had always been the source of mineral deposits for the dragon boat. But a huge mine had to be dug, right? Therefore, some people had to do this. Unfortunately, Zhang Xuanyu came to this place at the beginning. However, this guy dug out an opportunity from the flowstone pit. Because there were others here, Zhang Xuanyu only said it was about the opportunity of sealing techniques and combat techniques. Han Fei didn't ask much. Only then did Han Fei learn that Zhang Xuanyu didn't resist with dozens of people at all, but with more than 600 people. In that battle, nearly 400 people were killed on the spot, and the flowstone pit was stained with blood. More than 30 peak-level dangling fishers were killed. However, the dragon boat didn't make it public, so the news that the outside world learned was just a small incident and didn't attract much attention. Later, Zhang Xuanyu and the others fought and retreated, and those who survived in the end were all masters. Unfortunately, no matter how strong they were, they couldn't resist the pursuit of a group of peak-level dangling fishers. So they could only hide in the abyssal chasm. When everything was over, Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, Thank you. I can finally go out. However, Han Fei shook his head and said, You can go out. I'm just passing by. Puff. Are you kidding me? Why are you passing by? Han Fei said seriously, I was really passing by and saved you by the way. I have to go deeper. Huh? Chapter 492. Zhang Xuanyu was stunned. Wang Baiwan and the other two were also dumbfounded. You still want to continue to explore such a place? Are you King risking your life? Han Fei said to Zhang Xuanyu via voice transmission, I have to go. Zhang Xuanyu's face turned serious. I will go with you. Sun Revo exclaimed. Are you crazy? Zhang Xuanyu smiled. What are you afraid of? If I was afraid, I would have died long ago. Han Fei shook his head. No, if you have a way, take these people out. Zhang Xuanyu's face changed slightly. Don't. I can't promise you that. I didn't see you, but you were in front of me. How can I let you go in? Han Fei wondered. It seems that it is more dangerous inside. Isn't the biggest danger of the abyssal chasm that the energy will dissipate? Zhang Xuanyu shook his head slightly. The direct reason why so many people died in the abyssal chasm was indeed because of the dissipation of energy. On the way back, there will be a section of the sea where fishing boats can't be operated. But I think if this is the case, there will definitely be many heavenly talents who can go out alive. As long as they are ruthless enough, they can swim out. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Yes, when the dragon boats came in, there were 180,000 people. Besides, there should be no shortage of food on the dragon boats. Why didn't these people go out? Besides, wasn't there a section of the sea where fishing boats couldn't sail? Then, how did the dragon boats pass through that section of the sea? Han Fei suddenly found that he was far from understanding the horrors here. Come to think of it, there should be an even greater crisis ahead. Han Fei smiled and said, Let's go out of here first. By the way, can these blue guys be saved? Zhang Xuanyu shook his head. There is no way. Those people above the fish cabins on the first floor may be saved, but the people below the fish cabins are almost hopeless. Wang Baiwan sighed. Brother Han, you haven't seen them killing and eating each other. They can no longer be called human beings. Han Fei wondered, why don't they eat the blue fish? Lu Finfin rubbed her belly, which was no longer loose, and said, it's because they ate the blue fish. It wasn't that the little blue fish couldn't be eaten, but it couldn't be eaten without restraint. If one ate too many of these small blue fish, they would become more and more lost in the future. In the end, they didn't know how to fish at all, so naturally, they couldn't catch the little blue fish. So, they killed each other. Han Fei took a deep breath. Damn it, let's go to the first floor. I think those on the first floor and above can still be saved. It was not that Han Fei was overflowing with sympathy, but that these people were actually innocent, unlike those he met before who all wanted to kill him. Some of these people had already lost themselves. Most of them had gone mad. In Han Fei's opinion, people could die in battle, loot, or be eaten by fish, but they shouldn't starve to death like this. Since the four of them had recovered to their peak state, they were no longer afraid of going out. After all, whether it was the blue mutant or the people on the first floor or above, they no longer had a tenth of their original strength. Any one of the five of them could easily kill those people. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is there anything weird on this floor? Sun Bo suddenly said, yes. Wang Baiwan said, you must have seen it wrong. Lu Finfang said, Ruo, don't argue. You're the only one among the four of us who saw it. And after such a long time, the thing you mentioned didn't come to us, which means that it doesn't exist at all. You must have been hallucinating at that time. Zhang Xuanyi nodded. We can't rule out the possibility that that thing exists. Han Fei wondered, what are you talking about? Sun Ruo hurriedly said, it's a monster. At that time, we were chased and came down from above. We wanted to activate the spirit absorption array of the dragon boat. I saw a monster in the water where contractual spiritual beasts were raised. It was a monster with a human face, and it was smiling at me. Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, now that you mention it, it sounds very scary. Sun Ruo was speechless. It is scary. The place where we are now is also very scary. Han Fei frowned slightly, remembering what Xiao Sei told him about the danger under the boat. But he didn't encounter any danger all the way down. Besides, he thought that even if he encountered danger, he shouldn't be afraid. Han Fei smiled. Let's go. If there's really danger, they won't let us go out. But if we go out, whatever danger there is down there will have nothing to do with us. Zhang Xuanyi nodded, carrying a mid-quality spiritual rod. Let's go out. Han Fei curled his lips. Shoot. Why are you still using mid-quality spiritual weapons? Zhang Xuanyi. Han Fei threw a high-quality spiritual rod and a high-quality battle suit at him. I don't have time now. I'll get you an ultra-quality one later. Zhang Xuanyi was dumbfounded. Is it so simple? Do you think I can get it just like that? Wang Baiwan and the other two swallowed. Damn, he's so rich. How could he casually throw a high-quality spiritual weapon? But this was not the time to ask. They had to get out of here first. Han Fei chuckled. Have you ever taken their swallowing seashells? Zhang Xuanyi nodded. Of course I have. It's just that most of these people were not strong when they were alive, and there was nothing good in their swallowing seashells. I suspect that when the people on the dragon boats were still alive, they exchanged their treasures with others for food. So, don't expect to find anything good in their swallowing seashells. Han Fei thought about it and found it made sense. Who would guard their swallowing seashells when they were about to die? Roar, huh. As soon as the seal was lifted, Han Fei's fists glowed with golden light and were as fast as the wind. In the blink of an eye, dozens of people who approached were blown away by Han Fei. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei broke the triple barrier with a punch, and a huge gust of wind swept past. Wherever the fist wind reached, people were sent flying. Wow! Lu Finfang and the other two looked at each other. So fierce, so fierce. Zhang Xuanyi was also shocked. Fei, when did you learn boxing? Why didn't I know? Han Fei sneered. You were locked in the flowstone pit as soon as you showed up. It would be strange if you didn't know. Zhang Xuanyi frowned. No, I saw that you were on the wanted list, but I didn't have time to pay attention to this at that time. Where did you go later? Han Fei said lightly. After the sea grassland, I went to the undersea city to find Xia Xiaochan. Then, we explored the steps into the sea together. So, after you go out, don't go to these places. Hurry up and find your opportunity. Zhang Xuanyu gnashed his teeth and said, Asshole, I regret it. I hate that I'm not outside. Otherwise, I will be on the wanted list. Han Fei chuckled. Do you think you're not on the list? Xia Xiaochan and I are on the wanted list. Although your name is not on it, do you dare to go to a crowded place openly? I will definitely catch you as soon as you show up. Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes. Isn't it because of you, too? Han Fei chatted with Zhang Xuanyu while fighting. Wang Baiwan and the other two were all dumbfounded. Isn't Zhang Xuanyu's brother a bit too awesome? And he is also on the wanted list? Just when Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu were chatting, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. He moved his feet and punched out like a dragon, and a golden fist shadow blasted into the mist. Bam! Gotcha! The wooden planks were cracking and the mist was drifting away. Han Fei saw a big tail appear, swinging at him again. Umph! I'll kill you. The blood-drinking knife swept all the way, and the deck was shattered wherever it passed. The mist was split into two halves, forming two mist vortexes. Puff! A tail several meters long rolled under everyone's feet. However, in the blink of an eye, Han Fei had already caught up with it. Zhang Xuanyu's body trembled. So F** King strong. How many opportunities did this be star get? How did he become so strong? Han Fei took the lead, only to see a black figure jumping through the mist. Where are you going? Come back. Swish, swish, swish. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers swept out crazily. Han Fei didn't need to know where that thing was at all. He didn't believe that no matter how fast it was, it could be faster than his daggers. Squeak. But the next scene shocked Han Fei. He heard a baby's cry. Swish, swish, swish. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers sank into his body, and Han Fei turned around and shouted to Zhang Xuanyu, Seal yourself. Zhang Xuanyu said, Seal my ass. My strength has been restored. Let's do it. Han Fei smiled and said, Okay, then go do it. That thing ran very fast. I couldn't catch up with it. Sun Ruo hurriedly ran over. I knew it. I'm not mistaken. There really is something. Han Fei put away the blood-drinking knife. More than one. Chapter 493. The fog itself was a very strange atmosphere, and in this fog there were many unknowns, especially that cry that sounded like a baby's cry. In a place like this, it gave people goosebumps. Han Fei frowned slightly and said, Did you find anything different? Zhang Xuanyu smiled. Of course. Since this thing came out, those blue mutants have disappeared. It seems that they are very afraid of this thing. Han Fei said, Let's go. Go to the first floor. Don't worry about them. Kill them. None of the 5 people spoke and seemed to be listening. All Sun Ro and the other 2 could do was follow Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu closely. There were actually 5 floors under the dragon boat, and Han Fei and the others were now on the bottom floor. However, because of Han Fei, a strong teammate, they moved very fast. It only took them half an hour to go up to the 3rd underground floor. This floor was also where the black market on the dragon boat was located. Many people who couldn't afford to live on the first floor could live here for free, which was also the dirtiest place in the entire dragon boat. When Han Fei just got on this floor, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head, and then a fat face was stuck in front of him. F***CKU boom. Han Fei was really taken aback and punched out. However, a large hole filled with fangs suddenly appeared below the human face. Han Fei punched out, only to be bitten by it. Zhang Xuanyu took a deep breath and unleashed the 9-layered waves with his cudgel. However, to their surprise, that thing actually turned into a cloud of fog and disappeared. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. It's fake. Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu turned around in an instant, only to see Zhang Xuanyu suddenly hit out with his rod. Behind Lu Fenfong, a big mouth was directly picked up by Zhang Xuanyu. With a thought, Han Fei attached to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the chain directly buckled over. Bam! The human-faced monster was directly thrown to the ground by Han Fei. Lu Fengfang was already scared out of his wits, and his forehead was full of cold sweat. He didn't feel anything at all. Just now, when Zhang Xuanyu attacked, he looked sideways and saw a big mouth like a black hole. He almost peed his pants. Lu Fengfang staggered. "Oh my God, thank you, old Zhang and brother Han, for saving me." Zhang Xuanyu patted him on the shoulder, and Han Fei stared at the monster without speaking. A notification appeared in his eyes. Ghost Baby Salamander Introduction. After the deep-sea salamander devours a human, it will absorb the human's chaotic memories and form a soul-sucking ghost face. It can create an illusory body. Its speed was extremely fast, and its mouth was invincible. It could convert food into energy and store it in the void. Level 38 exotic quality contains spiritual energy. 25, 84 points consumption induces delirium. Collectible ghost face absorbable Han Fei grinned. This thing is so disgusting. It could even compete with a monstrous octopus. Zhang Xuanyu's face turned pale when he saw this guy. He shivered and had goosebumps all over his body. Sunro screamed directly, and a circle of seaweed wrapped around her body, subconsciously protecting herself. Lu Fengfang picked up the armor box and was about to smash it on the head. However, it was blocked by Han Fei's hand. Only Wang Baiwan said in surprise, "Dragon?" "Yeah." The ghost baby salamander was struggling. However, everyone was staring at its body at this moment. This thing was more like a lizard, with a body composed of blue and black. On its head, which was its face, was the distorted face of a woman. At this moment, it was wriggling, which made everyone's stomach churn. Han Fei took a deep breath and said, "I can't tell you. You may not believe it, but this is an exotic creature. Are any of you interested in signing a contract with it?" Han Fei would never sign a contract with it. A monstrous octopus hanging in the demon purification pot was enough to give him a headache. Now, there was another disgusting salamander. It was absolutely impossible for him to accept it. Otherwise, during the next fusion, there was an 80% chance that a freak would be born. After all, there were 4 creatures hanging in the demon purification pot at this moment. Except for an iron wall lobster, none of the other 3 were normal. The mutant devilfish only had a layer of skin. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus was an all-round freak. The divine seaweed octopus was a big green fat sausage, which was also ugly. If there was another ghost baby salamander, did he want to have a third contractual spiritual beast? Zhang Xuanyu quickly waved his hand. "No way. I don't want it. I don't want it." Sun Ruo cried. "I don't want it either." A Lu Fengfang cried, "No. I feel dizzy when I see it now." But Wang Baiwan squatted on the ground. "I want it." "You want it?" Even Han Fei exclaimed in disbelief. "What a weird taste you have. You want it too?" Wang Baiwan smiled and said, "In any case, this thing is just a kind of creature. It's not its fault that it is ugly. Since it is so strong, why don't you want it?" Han Fei turned his head. "You can have it if you want. There should be more than one of this thing. You'd better hurry up." Without saying anything, Wang Baiwan began to sign a contract. Han Fei was staring at the mist in a daze, when suddenly an ethereal voice came to his ear. "Help me! Help me! Who is it?" Han Fei suddenly scolded, giving the others a fright. Zhang Xuanyu quickly looked around. Fei, what's wrong?" Han Fei stared at him. "Did you hear someone crying for help just now?" "Crying for help?" They looked at each other. It was so quiet that even a needle falling to the ground could be heard. Where did the cry for help come from? Seeing that they didn't seem to hear anything, Han Fei couldn't help but frown. When he tried to listen again, he could no longer hear the cry for help. This made Han Fei wonder if he had an auditory hallucination. After this ghost baby salamander was taken away by Wang Baiwan, they didn't see another ghost baby salamander appear, so they went straight to the first floor of the cabin. In the quiet environment of the 3rd floor, there was finally a slight commotion. Hearing the commotion, everyone let out a sigh of relief. After all, it was definitely better to face those blue mutants who had gone completely crazy than to face these elusive ghost salamanders. Hiss! Roar! Han Fei cleared the way with his fists, and Zhang Xuanyu dragged the rod on the floor unscrupulously, not caring that it would be heard by those blue mutants. And the Wang Baiwan trio were no longer afraid, because their strength had been restored. Seeing hundreds of blue mutants rushing over from all directions, Han Fei didn't need to worry about the surroundings anymore. They were directly knocked down by Wang Baiwan and the other two. The 5 of them went straight up, and, after nearly half an hour, they finally came to the first floor of the deck. Zhang Xuanyu took a deep breath, stretched out, yawned, and said, "It's so comfortable. We're finally out." Lu Fengfang said, "It feels so good to be back on the deck." Sun Ro looked around vigilantly. "Don't forget, these people on the deck are not completely unconscious. They still have a little instinct, so they are much more powerful than the blue mutants." Han Fei looked up and said, "Let's go straight to the top of the ship." Zhang Xuanyu wondered, "Have you seen Xiao Sei?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Otherwise, how would I know about you?" This dragon boat had no defensive barriers now, so it was very easy to go directly to the top of the ship from the first floor of the deck. They could easily get up with a fishing hook. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. Just now, he was even dragged away by that delirious woman. He was really stupid. However, as soon as they cast their fishing hooks, they heard a splash as if something had fallen into the sea. Han Fei was still puzzled and was about to go over have a look, but he found that Zhang Xuanyu and the other three's faces suddenly changed. Han Fei knew that something bad had happened, and he immediately asked, "What do you mean? What fell into the sea?" Sun Ro trembled a little and said, "People. They jumped into the sea." Han Fei wondered, "Aren't they courting death? Do they still expect to swim out at this time?" Zhang Xuanyu shook his head slightly. "They didn't swim out. These people simply jumped into the sea, sank, and finally died in the sea." Han Fei felt that his head had been struck by lightning, and he asked in astonishment, "Suicide?" Zhang Xuanyu nodded. "In a sense, yes." Lu Fengfang's face was ugly. "This is the consequence of eating the blue fish. Some people can resist with their own will at the beginning. As long as they are clear-minded, they will not jump into the sea. But once..." Han Fei asked, "What?" Lu Fengfang sighed. "Once they lose the hope of survival, or their desire to survive reaches a certain level, they will jump into the sea. No one knows why." Wang Baiwan sighed. "You may not believe it, but when they jump, they all have a bright smile on their faces." Han Fei, "Damn, this is a typical ghost ship incident, almost exactly the same as my guess."